So, imagine a piece of software that is literally older than the internet itself.
Which is wild to even think about.
Right. It's crazy. And for the past 20 years, Silicon Valley's absolute brightest minds have spent literal billions of dollars trying to kill it.
Oh, yeah, constantly.
They've built these frictionless messaging apps, immersive social networks, instantaneous collaboration tools, all of it designed to finally put this archaic technology in the grave.
Man, yeah.
And yet here we are today, this 50-year-old dinosaur still quietly holds the keys to the entire digital economy.
It really does.
Like if you want to log into your bank or reset a password or drive actual measurable sales for a business, you have to use it. And the big question is just why?
It is the ultimate paradox of the modern digital landscape. We have an ecosystem that is totally obsessed with the shiny new object.
Oh, absolutely.
Artificial intelligence, the metaverse, algorithmic social video, everyone wants the new thing. Yet the actual engine of digital commerce remains a decentralized text-based protocol invented in the 1970s.
The 1970s.
Exactly. The rules governing the inbox just haven't changed, even as the landscape around it has completely fundamentally transformed.
So in this deep dive, you are going to explore the absolute cure for email marketing's staggering complexity. If you are running a business, managing a team, or, just trying to understand how the digital economy actually functions behind the scenes, understanding these foundational principles will completely shift your entire perspective.
It really is a paradigm shift.
It is. You'll stop seeing the inbox as this frustrating, opaque guessing game and start treating it as the most reliable, highest ROI asset you can possibly own. Today, we are immersing ourselves in the foundational introduction of Chad S. White's definitive work on the subject, the fourth edition of Email Marketing Rules.
Which is, it's just the perfect starting point, because before you can even think about optimizing a marketing program or fixing deliverability issues, you have to genuinely respect the unique dominance of the medium.
Right. You have to know what you're dealing with.
Exactly. And the source text spends a significant amount of time detailing the sort of graveyard of supposed email killers.
The graveyard is so full.
It is. Over the past decade, the tech press confidently assured us that Slack would eliminate internal email.
Yep.
Then SMS and WhatsApp were going to replace brand communications. Before that, it was Facebook Messenger. And if we look even further back, things like Google Wave and RSS feeds were heralded as the final nails in the coffin.
Oh, man, I actually remember the hype around Google Wave.
Well, everyone thought it was the future.
They really did. The idea was that email was too linear, too static, so we needed this dynamic, collaborative workspace. But the fatal flaw with platforms like Wave, or even Slack to a certain extent, is that they require everyone to be on that specific proprietary platform.
Right. It's a closed garden.
Exactly. If I want to send you a Slack message, you must have a Slack account. Which brings us to the first massive theme the text outlines regarding email's undefeated streak, which is the architecture of ownership and identity. Email is fundamentally ubiquitous and open.
And that distinction, the one between an open protocol and a proprietary platform, it's literally everything. Email operates on open standards. Protocols like SMTP and IMP, no single company owns it.
Right.
Sure, Google has a massive share with Gmail and Apple has a massive share with Apple Mail, but neither of them actually owns the concept or the physical infrastructure of email itself.
It's the difference between a public road network and like a private toll highway.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. If you build your brand's entire audience on a social media platform, let's say one of those massively popular video apps, you are essentially operating a business inside a rented nightclub.
Nightclub you don't have the keys to.
Right. The owner of that nightclub can change the algorithm, they can alter the dress code, charge you double for access to the very people who actively chose to follow you, or in the worst case, just shut the doors entirely.
We saw this with MySpace. We saw it with Google+.
Yeah.
And we see it constantly today with organic reach on modern platforms just dropping to near zero.
It's terrifying for a small business.
It is. And that open architecture of email is exactly what provides businesses with immense stability. When you collect an email address, you are acquiring an owned asset. You can take that list of subscribers, literally download it as a CSV file, and move from MailChimp to Klaviyo to Salesforce, and your audience comes right along with you.
Because it's yours.
Because it's yours. You have a direct, unmediated line of communication that is entirely immune to algorithmic whims. This is why the source text identifies the email address as a consumer's account of record.
I really want to break down that phrase, account of record, because it deeply touches on the psychology of how we actually navigate the internet. Your email address is essentially your digital passport.
That's exactly what it is.
You literally cannot exist in modern digital society without one. Like if you want to book a flight, file your taxes, sign up for a streaming service, or even create a profile on one of those shiny new email killer social media apps, what is the very first thing they ask you for?
An email address. Every single time.
An email address.
It acts as the primary unique identifier for a human being online. It is the core repository for digital receipts, password resets, and just critical life administration.
Yeah, if you lose access to your email, your life is basically on hold.
Oh, it's a nightmare. And from a business perspective, this identifier is becoming exponentially more valuable right now due to a massive structural shift in digital privacy. We are currently witnessing the death of third-party cookies across all the major web browsers.
Which is huge. So for anyone who isn't deep in the weeds of digital advertising, let's just clarify that mechanism really quickly.
Sure.
Historically, if I visited, say, a shoe brand's website, a third-party tracking cookie, which is essentially a tiny piece of code from a company like Meta or Google, would attach itself to my browser.
Secretly, usually.
Right, totally in the background. Then it would literally follow me around the web, watching what I read, what I watch on video sites, and eventually serve me an ad for those exact shoes on a completely different website.
Right. And consumers, alongside privacy regulators, have loudly pushed back against that level of invisible surveillance.
For good reason.
Absolutely. So Apple blocked third-party cookies in Safari, and Google is actively phasing them out in Chrome. So the old method of basically buying access to a murky third-party data broker's profile of a consumer, that's collapsing.
It's over.
It really is. The new gold standard, as highlighted in the text, is zero-party and first-party data.
Which is data the consumer explicitly and intentionally hands over to you, rather than data you secretly scrape from their behavior.
Exactly.
Like if I go into a physical running store and the clerk asks my shoe size and how many miles I run a week and I answer them, that's zero-party data. I am volunteering it so they can help me get the right shoe.
And the email address is the digital anchor for all of that volunteer data. When a customer signs up for your newsletter, that is the foundational piece of first-party data.
Right.
Every subsequent time they click a link in your email or browse your site after clicking through from an email, you are building a proprietary-owned behavioral profile tied to that specific email address. You don't have to rent that intelligence from a tech giant anymore. You just own it.
This shifts us a bit from the architecture of email into the psychology of the inbox. Because all this talk of tracking and data makes it sound very corporate, very mechanical. But the text points out that consumers actually prefer email for brand communications over every other channel.
They absolutely do.
And I have to push back on this a little, or at least play devil's advocate. Because if I'm a brand and I have a huge flash sale, why wouldn't I just send an SMS text message?
A lot of brands ask that exact question.
Right. Because my phone buzzes, I look at it instantly. The open rate on texts is practically 100%. Email just feels so much slower.
It feels slower because it is asynchronous. And that is precisely why consumers prefer it. Marketers constantly confuse the technical ability to reach someone with a consumer's actual desire to be reached.
Oh, that's such a good distinction.
You have to consider the cognitive load and the context of the interruption.
Yeah, a text message is a synchronous demand for attention. It buzzes in my pocket while I'm in a meeting or, while I'm putting my kids to bed. It triggers the sympathetic nervous system. It's an alert. I look at it because I feel like I have to know if it's an emergency.
Exactly. You're conditioned to respond to it.
Right. And when I see it's just a brand offering me 20% off socks, it honestly feels like a violation of my personal space.
It's a Herm invader on your lock screen, rather than a welcomed guest in the inbox. Email, by its very nature, waits patiently. The consumer remains in total, absolute control of the engagement.
Which is what they want.
Exactly. They decide when they're in the right mental space to parse through promotions, read a newsletter, or organize their digital life. Furthermore, email is inherently searchable and organized in a way that SMS simply isn't.
Oh, trying to search text is awful.
It's impossible. Try finding a complex receipt, a flight itinerary, or a specific promo code in a text thread from 3 months ago. You can't do it. The inbox, however, functions as an intentional, organized filing cabinet.
That makes the distinction incredibly clear. You are essentially trading the instant, forced attention of a text message for a much higher quality, voluntary attention span in the inbox.
Precisely.
And once you have that voluntary attention, email gives marketers a playground that other channels just can't match. The text outlines several traits here, like rich content, high measurability, and unparalleled automation.
Let's talk about the rich content first. The evolution of HTML email means brands are no longer sending just static, boring, plain text.
Right, like the old days.
Right. You have near total control over the visual presentation, imagery, typography, dynamic elements, and because it is highly measurable, you aren't just broadcasting a message into the void like a billboard on a highway.
You actually know who's looking.
Exactly. You can see the in-email behavior, the opens, the clicks, and track that directly to post-click behavior on the website.
Which allows for that unparalleled automation we mentioned. You aren't blasting a megaphone to a million people at once with the same message.
No, that's the old way.
Right. If someone clicks on a link about a specific product, the email platform's automation can wait exactly 3 days and then silently send a follow-up email tailored specifically to that product, offering a relevant resource or a discount. You are executing one-to-one marketing, but doing it at a scale of millions.
And this capability impacts the entire sales funnel. It drives top-of-funnel awareness with newsletters, it nurtures middle-of-funnel intent with automated educational sequences, and it clinches bottom-of-funnel conversions with things like abandoned cart reminders.
Those abandoned cart emails are so effective.
They're incredibly effective. But where the source text really plants its flag is the final characteristic of email's dominance, which is that it is the undisputed heavyweight champion of retention.
Yeah, social media is brilliant for acquiring a customer the first time. But once they have purchased, email is how you keep them coming back. Consumers explicitly associate their inbox with loyalty programs, service updates, and exclusive deals.
Think about the economics of it. If you rely on paid social media ads to re-engage past customers, you are literally buying your own audience back from a tech monopoly every single time you want to talk to them.
Which is just a terrible business model.
It's unsustainable. Email breaks that cycle. It is the ultimate retention engine because the cost of sending the 10th message to a loyal customer is virtually identical to the cost of sending the first. It's pennies.
And this is a massive transition in the text. We can't just look at the sunny, profitable side of the street here.
No, we have to look at the reality.
The author makes a crucial pivot to explore what they call the double-edged sword of the inbox. And the dark, chaotic reality is that the exact same architectural traits that make email powerful are what make it an absolute nightmare to execute properly.
It is a minefield. Let's start with the economic reality we just mentioned. The low cost of entry. It is a beautiful thing that a local bakery can afford the same communication channel as a Fortune 500 retailer. But that near zero cost of sending a message is also exactly what invites spammers, scammers, and aggressive overmailers.
Yeah, the barrier to entry is just too low.
Exactly. So the inbox is an environment under constant, relentless siege.
And because of that siege, consumer psychology has fundamentally shifted. The text highlights how people define the word spam today versus, say, 20 years ago.
It's a completely different definition now.
In the early 2000s, spam meant a malicious phishing attempt, a virus, or an absurdly wealthy prince asking for your bank routing number. It was objectively illegitimate, illegal mail.
Right. But today, the definition has broadened entirely. Inbox providers, companies like Google, Apple, and Yahoo, they have built incredibly sophisticated machine learning filters that block the truly malicious, dangerous spam at the server level.
So we don't even see it.
No, you rarely see it. The vast majority of cybercriminal mail never even reaches your junk folder. It simply bounces and gets rejected completely.
So what's actually left in the inbox? The modern consumer's definition of spam now includes completely legal, perfectly safe messages from brands they actually recognize, brands to whom they explicitly gave permission.
That is the massive shift. The shift is completely behavioral. To a modern consumer, spam no longer means illegal.
Right.
It means, I don't want this right now, it is boring, it is irrelevant, or you are just sending it way too often. And instead of taking the time to scroll all the way down and find the tiny gray unsubscribe link,
which they can never find anyway.
Exactly. The consumer simply taps the report spam button right there in their mail app. It's just faster.
And this is a terrifying mechanism for a business. Let's walk through what actually happens technically when a user hits that button.
This is not good.
No, because If I'm a brand and I do everything right, I get the customer to check the box saying yes, email me, but then I send them 5 boring emails in a week and they get annoyed and hit report spam. What actually happens to my business behind the scenes?
It immediately damages your sender reputation.
Okay, explain sender reputation.
So every domain and IP address that sends email has a hidden reputation score. It's governed by these wildly complex Bayesian algorithms at the inbox providers. When a user hits report spam, it sends a massive negative signal back to Gmail or Apple Mail.
Like a strike against you.
Exactly. And if enough people do that, and by the way, the threshold is shockingly low, sometimes just a tiny fraction of a percent of your list, the algorithm determines that your brand is fundamentally a nuisance.
And the punishment isn't just that you lose those specific subscribers who clicked the button, right?
No, that would be fine. The punishment is that the algorithm starts punishing your delivery to everyone.
Wow.
If your sender reputation drops, your emails won't even reach the people on your list who actually want to read them. The inbox provider will silently route your campaigns straight to the junk folder or just block them entirely, simply to protect their users' experience.
So permission isn't enough.
Permission is merely the starting line. It grants you the legal right to send a message, but it does absolutely not guarantee you placement in the inbox.
Yeah.
You have to continuously earn that placement by maintaining high engagement, like opens, clicks, replies, and rigorously avoiding negative signals.
Man. And if navigating the invisible algorithms of sender reputation wasn't difficult enough, there is the actual physical, visual complexity of getting the email to simply look right when it lands.
Oh, rendering. Yeah.
The text emphasizes the wild inconsistencies in rendering, and I think this is a major, major blind spot for a lot of professionals. Because, writing an email to a colleague in Gmail feels completely effortless.
Or you just type.
You type the words, maybe you bold a sentence, you hit send, and it looks exactly the same on their screen as it did on yours. So why is an email marketing campaign so fraught with peril?
Well, the author draws a really vital line here. Sending a plain text personal email is a standardized, universally accepted, simple protocol. Creating and sending a complex HTML marketing campaign is an entirely different discipline.
I like to think of email rendering using this sort of culinary metaphor.
Okay, I like metaphors.
Sending an HTML email campaign is basically like handing the exact same chocolate cake recipe, which is your code, to 30 different chefs in 30 different kitchens across the world.
Right, and none of the kitchens are equipped the same way.
Exactly.
The recipe is identical, but the Apple Mail chef, let's say, is working in this state-of-the-art, pristine kitchen. They execute the code flawlessly. They support beautiful background images, rounded corners, interactive elements.
It looks perfect.
It's gorgeous. But the Outlook chef, however, is using a broken oven from 2007.
Microsoft Outlook is notoriously bad for this.
It's infamous. Specifically, desktop versions of Outlook literally use Microsoft Word's rendering engine to display HTML, which completely and utterly breaks modern web design standards.
So the Outlook chef just ignores half your instructions, substitutes weird ingredients, and hands the user a cake that looks like a collapsed pile of chocolate mud.
That's exactly what happens.
And then you have the mobile device chefs
Right.
who are frantically trying to cram the cake into a tiny little box, and the voice assistant chef, like Siri or Alexa, who is literally just reading the raw ingredients out loud.
It's chaos. Furthermore, many of these rendering engines actively strip out elements just for security reasons. They might block your images from loading by default to prevent tracking pixels from firing.
Which ruins the design.
Completely ruins it. They might disable your custom fonts.
Mm.
So you are sending complex code into a highly fragmented, deeply hostile environment. You aren't skipping a stone across a calm pond. You are trying to pilot a commercial submarine through an active minefield.
The stakes are just incredibly clear when you put it like that. You are not just competing against other businesses for attention in the inbox. You are competing against your subscribers' family updates, their urgent work emergencies, and their general overarching exhaustion with digital noise.
Yes.
The inbox is a dangerous place, and one wrong move can permanently damage your ability to reach your own audience.
Which naturally brings us to the core thesis of the book and how we actually navigate this minefield. Because the environment is so incredibly chaotic, we desperately need a compass. We need rules.
Or any guardrails.
Exactly. And this introduces the text's incredibly robust defense of best practices.
Now, this is a fascinating philosophical debate in modern business right now. If you spend even 10 minutes scrolling on LinkedIn, you will inevitably see a parade of marketing influencers aggressively claiming that best practices are dead.
Oh, I see every day.
They preach this gospel of disruption. They say things like, there are no rules anymore. The only best practice is whatever works for you, so just break things, move fast, and stand out.
It is a very seductive, very fashionable narrative.
Sounds cool.
It sounds bold, right?
Hmm?
But the author thoroughly and systematically dismantles this mindset. The text argues that best practices are not just arbitrary opinions dreamed up by consultants in a boardroom. They absolutely exist, and they exist at an immutable industry level, rooted in hard, unforgiving realities.
The most unforgiving reality being the actual law.
Precisely. You cannot just disrupt your way around the GDPR in Europe,
No, you cannot.
or the Can't Spam Act in the United States, or CSL in Canada. These laws dictate strict, mandatory requirements regarding consent, data privacy, and the physical inclusion of opt-out mechanisms. If your idea of breaking the rules involves ignoring legal compliance, you aren't an innovator. You are just inviting a multi-million-dollar class action lawsuit.
Yeah, that's not disruption, that's just illegal.
Right. And beyond the law, best practices are rooted in the strict algorithms of the inbox providers we just discussed. Google's spam filters genuinely do not care about a brand's desire to be edgy.
They really don't.
If you fail to authenticate your domain with protocols like DKIM and SPF, which are these technical best practices that essentially act as a digital wax seal, proving your identity, your emails will be blocked. Physics and code do not care about your marketing philosophy.
And finally, best practices are rooted in ingrained human behavior and usability. The text notes that some marketers will inevitably point to a rare anecdotal case where a company broke all the conventions. Maybe they sent an email with absolutely no subject line or a bizarre, illegible design, and it went viral and drove massive sales.
Right, they always bring up the outlier.
Always. They use that lottery ticket success as proof that the rules don't matter at all.
The author's response to that is fantastic, though. He says, beating the odds occasionally doesn't change the odds.
I love that quote.
It's so true. If you play Russian roulette and survive, it doesn't make playing Russian roulette a sound long-term business strategy.
Definitely not. The crucial intellectual leap the text asks the reader to make here is separating the concept of best practices from the best execution.
This is key.
This completely resolves the tension between following the rules and being creative. Best practices are the foundation. They minimize your risk, they keep you out of court, and they keep you out of the spam folder. The best execution, on the other hand, is what happens when you take that rock-solid foundation and layer your specific brand values, your unique copywriting voice, and your specific audience needs right on top of it.
To clarify the mechanism here, let's look at the automotive analogy the author provides, which I just think is brilliant. Let's look at the engineering constraints of building a car. Every single car legally allowed on a public road shares a strict set of best practices.
They have to.
They all have 4 wheels, a steering wheel, headlights, seatbelts, and a brake pedal. Those are non-negotiable requirements for the vehicle to function safely within the shared infrastructure of the highway system.
So a marketer obsessed with disruption might argue that a steering wheel is a boring, outdated best practice and try to replace it with, I don't know, a joystick. Or they might remove a wheel just to be visually unique.
But they won't pass safety standards, and more importantly, no one will actually know how to drive it.
Right, but accepting the best practices of 4 wheels and a steering wheel does not breed mediocrity or sameness, because a Honda Odyssey minivan and a Ferrari SF90 execute those identical foundational requirements to create vastly, completely different experiences.
Exactly. The minivan is executing the best practices to optimize for passenger capacity, safety, and fuel economy. The Ferrari is executing the exact same best practices to optimize for aerodynamics, horsepower, and thrill.
But they both have 4 wheels.
They both follow the fundamental rules of the road, but the execution is fiercely tailored to the brand's identity and the driver's desires.
You literally cannot just slap a Ferrari badge on a shopping cart with no brakes and call it disruptive transportation. It will just crash.
It will. And the text brings in a great quote from Walter Isaacson, the biographer of Steve Jobs and Albert Einstein, to really hammer this home. The quote is, "Einstein knew what was inside the box before he thought outside of it. Creativity without knowledge can be an extremely dangerous thing."
Wow. In the context of email marketing, creativity without a foundation of best practices doesn't lead to innovation.
No, it leads to broken HTML code. It leads to triggering spam traps, alienating your actual subscribers, and permanently tanking your sender reputation.
So the actionable advice here for anyone listening is to just stop wasting your precious time, energy, and budget trying to reinvent the foundational wheel of email.
Stop trying to be clever with the basics.
Right. Use industry best practices as your safety guardrails, accept them as the cost of entry, and then funnel all of your creative energy and budget into how your brand specifically speaks within those bounds.
Which brings us to a really chronic, systemic problem in the business world.
Yeah, because if the roadmap is clear, and we know we need to build a structurally sound car before we race it, why do so many companies still end up crashed in a ditch?
Because they refuse to put gas in the car and they refuse to hire a competent mechanic. We really have to address the resource fallacy and the chronic underfunding of email marketing programs.
This goes all the way back to our very first point about email having a low cost of entry. Because it has carried this reputation for 50 years of being cheap and simple, executives tend to view it as a low-tier operational task rather than a strategic powerhouse.
It's treated like an afterthought.
Exactly. They don't give the email team adequate headcount, they don't hire actual specialists, and they certainly don't invest in the enterprise-level technology platforms required to execute complex automation.
The source material delivers a very profound, blunt assessment of this reality. It says, no company has ever starved its way to email marketing success.
That is so good.
Because the channel has become deeply technically complex, navigating rendering engines, AI spam algorithms, privacy legislation, and data integration, you cannot simply hand the keys to a junior intern and expect a maximum return on investment.
It's unfair to the intern, honestly.
It is. The text explicitly warns that to just be average in email marketing today means you are actively falling behind because the baseline of consumer expectation is constantly rising.
Average is the new falling behind. It's a sobering reality. And this chronic under-resourcing leads directly to one of the most toxic dysfunctions in corporate decision-making. The text calls it the danger of the focus group of one.
Oh, this is a critical psychological trap. The focus group of one occurs when marketers, or more often high-level executives, rely on their own personal gut instincts or subjective preferences to make strategic decisions, completely overriding actual audience data.
We've all seen this play out in a boardroom, haven't we?
Too many times.
The chief marketing officer walks in and says, look, I personally hate promotional emails that use emojis in the subject line, and I absolutely despise those pop-up windows that ask for your email address on the website. They annoy me, so we are banning them from our brand entirely.
Right.
They make a sweeping decree based on their own personal annoyance, completely ignoring the mountain of empirical A/B testing data showing that pop-ups, when configured with the right timing and incentives, are wildly effective at building a healthy list.
To understand why this happens, we have to look at the demographic and behavioral gap between the executive and the consumer. The text explicitly dissects this. Why is the CEO's intuition so incredibly flawed?
Because they live in a different world.
Exactly. The CEO is highly tech-savvy. They are reading their emails on the newest, most expensive flagship smartphone, connected to high-speed corporate Wi-Fi. They often have different, far more aggressive filtering habits to manage their high-volume inbox.
And financially, they're in a different place.
Right. They are generally much less concerned about trading their personal data for a 10% discount because their income bracket doesn't necessitate clipping digital coupons.
So the 55-year-old CEO earning seven figures simply does not share the demographic reality, the daily financial struggles, or the browsing habits of their 24-year-old target subscriber.
Exactly. When the executive assumes their personal preferences automatically represent the entire market, their instincts are actively sabotaging the company's growth. And this reinforces the power of best practices. Instead of relying on a CEO's subjective, highly biased preference, you start with conventional industry wisdom, the established best practices.
You put the wheels on the car.
Right. And then you run rigorous A/B tests.
Let's define the mechanism of an A/B test for a moment, just to be super clear on how we actually defeat the focus group of one in the real world.
Sure.
If the CEO hates emojis, but the email marketer thinks they will increase open rates, you don't argue in the boardroom.
Yeah.
You take your list of, say, 100,000 subscribers, you send 10,000 of them the email with an emoji, and you send another 10,000 of them the exact same email without an emoji.
And you hold all of the variables constant. Same time of day, same core subject line, same audience segment.
Yeah. Right. Everything else is identical. And then you just let the math decide. If the emoji version generates a statistically significant increase in opens and clicks, the debate is over. You send the winning version to the remaining 80,000 people.
You let the actual audience vote with their behavior.
Exactly. You use objective data to override subjective executive intuition.
The practical takeaway for business leaders listening to this is to deeply recognize your own bias. You are not your subscriber. You must secure adequate funding, headcount, and technology for your email program so your team actually has the infrastructure to run those complex tests. Data, not gut instinct, must drive the strategy.
So synthesizing everything we've uncovered so far, the inbox is a minefield governed by ruthless algorithms. We know we absolutely need best practices as our foundation. We know we need to properly fund the team and rely on A/B testing data rather than executive opinions. The final piece of the puzzle here is execution. How do we practically apply all of this knowledge? Because as we've established, it is vastly complicated. How do we prevent a well-funded team from making a catastrophic brand-damaging error when they hit send on a campaign going to 2 million people?
We systemize the knowledge.
Systemize it.
Yes. The text introduces a methodology inspired heavily by Dr. Atul Gawande's work, specifically his book, The Checklist Manifesto.
Oh, Gawande's work is fascinating. He's a surgeon who studied how the medical field and the aviation industry manage extreme complexity to prevent fatal errors.
Right. Gawande's core premise is that in the modern world, the sheer volume and complexity of knowledge required to execute highly technical tasks has vastly exceeded the capacity of human memory.
We just can't hold it all in our heads anymore.
No, we can't. When an avoidable failure happens today, when a veteran pilot forgets to lower the landing gear, or a brilliant surgeon operates on the wrong side of a patient's body, it does not happen because they are uneducated, malicious, or stupid.
It happens because in a highly stressful, multi-step, complex process, the human brain simply dropped a variable. They missed a single crucial step.
Exactly. To counteract human fallibility, these high-stakes industries rely on rigorous physical checklists. The author of our source text applies this exact same philosophy to email marketing. Email has seemed to become too complex to operate on memory, intuition, or just winging it.
To structure this complexity, the book categorizes its 184 specific rules into 2 distinct buckets. This creates a functional manifesto for marketers. The first bucket is what the text calls the must-follow rules.
And there are roughly 18 of these must-follow rules. These are not suggestions for optimization. They are the absolute hard boundaries of acceptable behavior that concern permission, data privacy, and strict legal compliance.
The law.
Yes. As the text unequivocally states, if you break these rules, you are not just engaging in poor email marketing, you are actively spamming. These are the legal non-negotiables.
The second bucket contains the recommended rules. There are over 160 of these, covering the nuances of design, copywriting, metric analysis, targeting, and complex automation workflows.
These are the levers you pull to transform an average compliant program into a truly great, highly profitable one.
But having a massive list of rules isn't quite enough on its own. You need a framework to understand how they all interact with each other. To master this, the text outlines the 4 pillars of email marketing.
This is the conceptual ecosystem.
Right. The 4 pillars are email creative, email strategy, your marketing platform, and omnichannel synergies.
Let's examine the anatomy of these pillars because it's crucial. Pillar 1, email creative, is what the subscriber actually sees. It encompasses the copywriting, the visual design, the underlying HTML coding, and critically, the design of the landing page on the website that the email actually links out to.
Pillar 2, email strategy, is the invisible architecture behind the creative. This covers how you legitimately acquire subscribers and build your list, how you monitor and manage your sender reputation and deliverability, how you segment your audience into targeted groups, and how you analyze the performance metrics.
Pillar 3 is your marketing platform. This is the enterprise software, the ESP or email service provider that you use to store the zero-party data, configure the automated triggered messages, and actually deploy the campaigns.
Like Salesforce or Clivio.
Exactly. And Pillar 4, omnichannel synergies, is the highest level of maturity. This dictates how your email program coordinates seamlessly with your physical retail stores, your social media advertising, and your customer service desk.
What is truly vital to grasp here is the deep, deep interdependence of these pillars. The text makes a profound point regarding specialization. You cannot be an elite email designer if you don't possess a working knowledge of how HTML code impacts deliverability strategy.
Because you could design the most visually stunning avant-garde email in the world, composed entirely of massive, high-resolution images.
Right. It could look like a magazine cover.
Exactly. But if the underlying code consists of just one giant image slice with no live text, which is a creative decision, the strategy pillar fails. Because Gmail spam filters look at that image-to-text ratio, they assume you are trying to hide malicious keywords inside a picture, and they route your beautiful design straight to the junk folder.
So the creative killed the strategy.
Precisely. Or consider the copywriter. A copywriter might craft the most persuasive, incredible subject line ever written. But if they don't understand the mechanics of the landing page, if the email promises a specific 50% discount, but the link dumps the user on a generic homepage where they can't even find the product, the conversion fails.
The ecosystem collapsed.
It completely collapses.
To bring Gwanda's medical analogy back into focus here, does an email copywriter really need to care about deliverability analytics?
Yes.
Yes. Because if a surgeon only knows how to execute a flawless incision, but has absolutely no understanding of how the anesthesia works, or how to read the patient's vital signs on the monitor during the operation,
The patient dies.
the patient dies.
Yeah.
You have to understand the holistic system to effectively execute your specific discipline within it.
For a professional aiming to lead a marketing department or become a chief marketing officer, you must cultivate a foundational appreciation for every single pillar. You don't have to personally write the HTML code yourself, and you don't have to configure the API integrations in the platform yourself.
No, you hire experts for that.
Right. But you must possess the technical literacy to understand how a coding decision affects strategic deliverability and how platform capabilities constrain creative possibilities.
The actionable mandate for any business leader listening is that you must systematize your email operations. You cannot rely on the tribal knowledge of one veteran employee who just knows how the system works.
Because if they quit, you're doomed.
Exactly. You must build rigorous, documented checklists for your team that clearly separate the absolute legal non-negotiables from the creative optimizations. You have to treat every campaign deployment like a surgical procedure or a commercial aircraft taking off.
If we pull all of these threads together to synthesize the fundamental soul of this introductory chapter, email marketing is a deeply complex, enduring digital workhorse. It has survived every technological attempt to replace it because of its unique, unshakable architectural strengths as the open, decentralized, preferred account of record for the internet.
It's the bedrock.
It is. But it is an incredibly perilous environment. True, sustainable success is not found in seeking out clever shortcuts, algorithmic hacks, or disruptive stunts to bypass the rules. It is found in mastering the intersection of those unshakable industry best practices and your unique, well-funded, data-driven brand execution.
It's about respecting the dinosaur,
Yeah.
and realizing it hasn't gone extinct because it is actually a highly evolved apex predator in the digital ecosystem.
That's a great way to view it.
In our next session, we'll dive deep into those absolute legal non-negotiables we touched on, the must-follow rules of list building, and why securing a user's permission is literally just the beginning of the battle for the inbox.
But before we conclude today, I really want to leave everyone with a final forward-looking thought to ponder, something that builds directly on the evolving reality of the inbox we've mapped out today.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spent a lot of time analyzing how human consumers have broadened their definition of spam to include boring, perfectly legal permissioned emails, and how they use the report spam button to train algorithms. But consider the immediate future. As tools like Apple Intelligence, Google's Gemini, and other advanced AI agents become deeply and seamlessly integrated into our personal inboxes, they will begin to act as autonomous gatekeepers.
Oh, wow.
Right. What happens to your business when it's no longer the human consumer deciding your email lacks value? What happens when an AI assistant silently scans your campaign, cross-references it against millions of data points regarding the user's current context, decides your message is relevant, and silently archives it before the human even knows you sent it?
That is terrifying.
Are your current best practices and your current reliance on basic creativity sophisticated enough to impress a machine that never sleeps?
That is a staggering paradigm shift for anyone relying on average, underfunded marketing tactics. It brings us right back to the realization that the inbox is incredibly murky, and the rules of engagement are quietly, constantly shifting beneath our feet. If you don't understand the foundational architecture of the ecosystem, you are operating completely blind. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
Hitting the send button on your marketing email, it doesn't mean it actually goes to an inbox.
No, not at all.
In fact, you might be like driving your digital reputation off a cliff without even realizing it. We all operate under this massive illusion of control.
Right, because the software makes that satisfying little swoosh sound.
Exactly, that swoosh. Your dashboard updates, and you just assume your, meticulously crafted message is sitting safely in your customer's primary inbox.
But the reality of what happens after that swoosh sound is essentially a high-stakes algorithmic gauntlet. I mean, mailbox providers are running complex, unforgiving calculations in milliseconds.
It's invisible gatekeeping.
It is. They aren't just looking at the words you wrote. They are analyzing your historical behavior, your underlying code, your authentication protocols, and, your audience's micro-interactions.
So building a massive subscriber list and getting your design pixel perfect is completely useless if the internet's invisible gatekeepers decide you look like a threat.
Completely useless.
Today's deep dive unpacks the hidden mechanics of email deliverability and mailbox providers. For anyone managing a brand, running a marketing team, or building a business mastering, this is not some IP chore you can just outsource and forget about.
No, definitely not.
We are talking about the absolute foundation of reaching your audience, protecting your brand's reputation, and actually driving revenue. So let's start with the blame game.
Oh, the blame game. Yeah, most people treat deliverability as a purely software-based problem.
Right. When open rates suddenly plummet, the immediate knee-jerk reaction is to blame the email service provider.
Exactly. Whether you are using Klaviyo, HubSpot, MailChimp, Salesforce, whatever it is, the assumption is that paying their monthly fees somehow guarantees inbox placement.
Right. It's a toll road and you paid the toll.
Right. But the absolute first principle we have to establish today is that 100% deliverability is a total myth.
A total myth.
If an agency or a vendor ever promises you 100% inbox placement rate, you should, just terminate that conversation immediately.
Because they are selling snake oil.
Complete snake oil.
Since 100% is a mathematical impossibility, due to server outages, aggressive individual user settings, and fluid spam algorithms, we really need to talk about realistic benchmarks. When you log into your platform, what number should actually give you peace of mind versus, sending you into a panic mode?
Well, you want to aim for an inbox placement rate above 98%. That is the gold standard.
Okay, 98.
Yeah. If you are sitting in the mid-90s, say 95 or 96%, you have a healthy program, but there is some room for optimization there.
Sure, you can tweak things.
But the critical threshold is 90%. The moment your placement rate dips below 90%, you are looking at a systemic failure.
Wow, below 90 is systemic failure.
Yes. A sub 90% placement rate means the major mailbox providers, Gmail, Yahoo, Microsoft, they are actively inspecting your mail and making a conscious algorithmic decision to route it to the junk folder. Or, even worse, they are silently dropping it entirely.
That silent drop is the terrifying part, isn't it? You don't always get a bounce notification.
No, you don't.
The email just vanishes into the void.
Yeah.
And this is exactly when that blame game peaks. The marketing director sees the sub 90% number, assumes the ESP's shared IP pool is polluted, and decides to just migrate the entire database to a new platform.
Which is such a mistake. Migrating platforms to fix a deliverability issue is a fundamental misunderstanding of who is actually in control.
Right.
Your ESP does not dictate your deliverability. You do. Your own sending practices dictate it.
But the ESP provides the pipes.
Yes, the ESP provides the routing infrastructure. They maintain the physical servers. They manage the connection speeds. But Google and Yahoo are judging your specific brand.
Not the ESP.
Right. They are looking at the volume of your unknown user bounces, your spam complaint ratios, the cleanliness of your HTML, and the erraticism of your sending frequency.
The sources have this great analogy for this. It's like switching gyms because you aren't losing weight, completely ignoring the fact that your workout routine is terrible and your diet is worse.
That is the perfect way to look at it. You can go to the most expensive, state-of-the-art fitness club in the city, but if your underlying habits haven't changed, the new equipment is going to yield the exact same lack of results.
You cannot outrun a bad sender reputation just by migrating to a new IP address.
You really can, because the concept of reputation tracking has evolved so dramatically. A decade ago, spammers would just, burn through IP addresses.
Right, they just cycle them.
Yeah, they would buy a block of IPs, spam millions of people, get blacklisted, abandon those IPs, and just go buy new ones.
Whack-a-mole.
Exactly. So to combat this, mailbox providers shifted their primary focus from IP reputation to domain reputation. Your brand's root domain, let's say it's yourcompany.com, it acts exactly like a financial credit score.
So every single email you send is essentially a microtransaction on that credit report.
Exactly. If you are consistently buying dirty lists, hitting spam traps, or blasting people who haven't opened an email in 3 years, your domain's credit score just tanks.
And you can't just move to a new ESP and pretend your history doesn't exist.
No, because Gmail looks at the incoming mail, sees your company.com in the sender address, pulls up your bad credit history, and routes you straight to the spam folder. It doesn't matter how pristine your new ESP's servers are.
And repairing a burned domain reputation, I mean, that takes months, right? Months of painstaking, highly restrictive behavioral changes.
Oh, absolutely. You essentially have to stop emailing anyone who isn't a hyper-engaged daily opener.
But let's look at the inverse scenario.
Yeah.
What if you were launching a brand new business? You register a new domain, you spin up a fresh dedicated IP, and you have zero sender history.
Right, a blank slate.
You don't have a bad credit score, but you don't have a good one either. You are basically a digital ghost.
And being a ghost to a spam filter is almost as dangerous as being a known threat.
Because they're paranoid?
Inbox algorithms are inherently paranoid. If an unknown entity suddenly shows up on their network and tries to hand out 50,000 pieces of mail in a single hour, the immediate assumption is that a spammer just registered a burner domain.
Which is why you must execute a strict IP and domain warm-up process.
Yes, you have to systematically introduce yourself to the network. You do not start by blasting your entire acquired list.
Right, you have to go slow.
Very slow. On day one, you might manually select just 50 of your absolute highest intent users. Maybe your internal team, early beta testers, or your most loyal repeat buyers.
You send to just them.
You send to them. And Gmail watches. It sees that out of those 50 emails, 40 were open, 10 were clicked, and 0 were marked as spam.
So you've made your first successful credit card payment, essentially.
Exactly. Then on day 2, you bump it to 100 emails. Day 3, 250.
You are demonstrating to the algorithms that your volume growth is organic and that your audience genuinely anticipates your content.
Right. And this warm-up phase requires intense discipline. It often takes 4 to 8 weeks of gradual mathematical volume increases to establish a baseline reputation that can actually handle mass marketing blasts.
I can imagine most startup founders hate this. It conflicts with that whole move fast and break things ethos.
Well, they despise it. But if you try to bypass the warm-up protocol, the thing you break is your own root domain.
So, assuming you've built up that stellar credit score, your domain reputation becomes your most vital digital asset. It is the passport that gets you through the border checkpoints at Yahoo and Outlook.
It really is.
But a passport can be stolen, and a reputation can be hijacked. So we have to discuss the physical architecture required to protect that asset. We need to look at the digital plumbing.
The digital plumbing, yeah. The fundamental mistake most organizations make here is routing all their communications through a single massive pipe.
So mixing everything together.
Right. You have promotional emails, your weekly newsletters, your seasonal sale blasts, your promotional offers. Then you have transactional emails, order confirmations, shipping updates, password resets.
The important stuff.
And finally, you have corporate mail your finance team, emailing invoices to vendors, or your CEO emailing partners.
So if you are sending your marketing blasts from the exact same subdomain and IP address as your password resets, you are creating a catastrophic single point of failure.
You are, because marketing emails, by their very nature, generate friction. Even the most targeted, brilliant promotional campaign will result in a few unsubscribes, a handful of bounces, and inevitably, someone who forgot they subscribe and hits the spam button.
And that friction generates negative reputation data.
Exactly. Transactional emails, however, are mission critical. When a user requests a password reset, they expect it in their inbox in less than 10 seconds.
Right. If I don't get that reset email instantly, I'm clicking it again.
And if you mix your traffic, a temporary reputation dip caused by a Tuesday marketing blast can cause your password resets to get throttled or routed to spam on Wednesday.
Wow. So your customer service lines blow up because users are locked out of their accounts, and your developers are scrambling to figure out why the system is failing.
It's a nightmare.
You essentially cross-contaminated your pristine drinking water with the natural runoff from your industrial plant.
That's a great analogy. To solve this, you have to completely isolate the subdomains.
How do you do that in practice?
You isolate them at the DNS level. If your primary domain is yourbrand.com, your corporate employee email stays on the root. employee@yourbrand.com.
Okay, so just the regular domain.
Right. But your transactional engine needs its own dedicated subdomain, perhaps receipts.yourbrand.com or accounts.yourbrand.com.
Got it.
And your promotional engine uses another, like mail.yourbrand.com or info.yourbrand.com.
So this compartmentalization means the mailbox providers track 3 separate reputations.
Exactly. If your promotional subdomain takes a hit because of a poorly targeted holiday campaign, your transactional subdomain remains entirely unaffected. The receipts and password resets keep flowing instantly.
Okay, that solves the internal routing problem. But it doesn't solve the external threat of spoofing.
No, it doesn't.
Because email was built in the 1970s, the underlying protocol, SMTP, has virtually zero built-in security.
It's crazy when you think about it. Anyone with basic coding knowledge can spin up a server and send an email that claims the prem address is CEO@yourbrand.com.
And spammers use this flaw constantly. They send phishing emails disguised as legitimate brands, tricking consumers into handing over credit card details.
Right. And when thousands of those phishing emails get flagged as spam by angry users whose domain reputation takes the hit, yours, even though you didn't send the emails.
Which is wild. This is why authentication protocols are non-negotiable. Most marketers treat SPF, DKIM, and DIR as alphabet soup, just something to dump on the IT department's desk.
They do, yeah.
But as a business leader, you need to understand the mechanics of how these defensive layers interact.
Let's strip away the jargon and look at the underlying mechanic.
Perfect, let's do it.
So SPF Sender Policy Framework is your first line of defense. It basically operates as a public directory.
Like a guest list.
Exactly. You publish a specific text record in your domain's DNS settings that explicitly lists the IP addresses of the servers authorized to send mail on your behalf.
Okay, so that includes your marketing ESP.
Right. Your ESP, your customer service platform like Zendesk, and your transactional engine.
So when an email arrives at a Google server claiming to be from your brand, Google checks that public SPF record.
Yes. And if the server that actually handed the email to Google isn't on your approved list, the SPF check fails.
The bouncer turns them away?
Exactly. The problem with SPF, though, is that it only validates the IP address. It doesn't validate the actual content of the email, and it breaks entirely if an email gets forwarded.
Which brings us to the second protocol, DKIM, or Domain Keys Identified Mail.
DKIM solves the forwarding problem and the content integrity problem through public key cryptography.
Okay, cryptography sounds complicated. How does it actually work?
It's actually pretty elegant. When your ESP generates an email, it runs the content of the message, the header, the body, the subject line, through an algorithm to create a unique hash, which is just a string of characters.
Okay.
It then encrypts that hash using a private cryptographic key that only your ESP possesses.
So this encrypted hash is attached to the email as a hidden header signature. Think of it like a highly complex mathematical wax seal.
A wax seal is the perfect way to visualize it. When the email reaches the recipient's mailbox provider, the provider looks up your domain's DNS records, finds your public key, and uses it to decrypt the signature.
And if the decrypted hash matches a fresh hash generated by the receiving server,
then two things are instantly proven. First, the email undeniably originated from a server holding your private key.
okay, identity confirmed.
And second, not a single comma or link inside the email was altered while it was traveling across the internet.
That's the integrity part. Because if a malicious actor intercepted the email and swapped out a link to point to a phishing site, the hash would break, right?
Exactly. The signature would fail, and the mailbox provider would know the message was tampered with.
So SPF checks the origin, and DKIM verifies the integrity. But even if an email fails both of those checks, the receiving server still has to decide what to actually do with it.
Right. Historically, mailbox providers would just sort of guess. They might put it in spam, they might deliver it with a warning banner, or they might just let it through.
And that ambiguity is what DMRC was built to eliminate.
Yes. DMRC stands for Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting, and Conformance. It is the ultimate enforcement mechanism.
It's a policy you publish in your DNS that explicitly dictates how receivers should handle mail that fails your SPF or DKIM checks.
You are essentially giving the bouncer at the door a strict set of operating instructions, but you don't just jump straight to the nuclear option. Implementing DMRC is a phased operation.
Because if you mess it up, you block your own mail.
Exactly. It requires meticulous monitoring. You start by setting your DMRC policy to P equals none.
What does that do?
This is a monitoring phase. The policy tells Google and Yahoo, if an email fails authentication, deliver it normally. but send me an XML report detailing the failure.
So you gather intel.
Right. You analyze these daily reports to identify if legitimate systems, maybe a forgotten HR platform or a legacy invoicing tool, are failing authentication because someone forgot to add them to the SPF record.
So you spend a few weeks or months patching those holes, ensuring every legitimate tool is properly signing its mail.
Yes. Once the reports show that only actual spammers are failing the checks, you escalate the policy.
You move to P equals quarantine.
Exactly. Which instructs mailbox providers to route all failing mail directly to the spam folder. You monitor again, and finally, you reach the summit.
Yeah.
P equals reject.
At this enforcement level, you're telling the global internet infrastructure, if a message claims to be from my brand but fails authentication, destroy it at the gateway. Do not even allow it into the spam folder.
Hitting P equals reject effectively immunizes your brand against domain spoofing. It is a massive technical achievement.
And to secure the actual transit of the data, you also ensure opportunistic TLS is enabled, meaning your servers and the receiving servers negotiate a handshake to encrypt the email while it is physically moving across the network cables, preventing passive eavesdropping.
Yes, that secures the transit. The industry recognized that getting to DMARC enforcement requires significant technical lifting, so they created a massive visual incentive for brands to do it. It's an initiative called BIMI Brand Indicators for Message Identification.
This is where security directly intersects with marketing ROI. BIMI transforms your defensive posture into free brand impressions.
It really does. If you have a DMARC policy at enforcement, meaning quarantine or reject, you qualify for BIMI.
How do you set that up?
You publish another DNS record containing a verified SVG file of your trademarked corporate logo. You also have to purchase a verified mark certificate, a VMC, from a certifying authority, which involves a legal vetting process to prove you actually own the trademark.
Once that's in place, major providers like Apple Mail, Gmail, and Yahoo will pull that logo directly from your DNS and display it natively in the user's inbox, right next to the subject line before the email is even opened.
The psychological impact of that cannot be overstated.
It's huge.
When a user is scrolling through a crowded inbox full of generic initials and gray avatars, your full-color, verified logo instantly anchors their attention.
It provides immediate, subconscious cryptographic proof to the consumer that this email is authentically yours. It elevates open rates and builds inherent trust.
Absolutely.
So the infrastructure is locked down, your SPF is pristine, your DKIM keys are rotating, your DMARC is at reject, and your BIMI logo is shining in the inbox. You've built an impenetrable fortress.
But none of that plumbing matters if the water you're pumping into it is toxic.
Right. If you let bad email addresses into your database, they will rot your reputation from the inside out. We have to talk about list hygiene and the bouncer at the sign-up form.
Mailbox algorithms enforce strict mathematical thresholds regarding how many bad addresses you are allowed to hit before they classify you as a threat. We really need to examine two specific metrics here: the hard bounce rate and the spam complaint rate.
Let's define the mechanics of a hard bounce versus a soft bounce, because the distinction dictates how the algorithm judges you.
Right. So a soft bounce is a temporary delivery failure.
Like an out of office.
Sort of. The receiving server sends back a 4XX SMTP error code, which essentially means I'm busy or the user's inbox is full. Your ESP will usually try to deliver the message again later.
Okay, so it's not fatal.
No. A hard bounce, however, generates a 5XX SMTP error code. This is a permanent fatal failure. The receiving server explicitly tells you this domain does not exist or this specific user account has been deleted.
And mailbox providers are incredibly sensitive to hard bounces.
Extremely. The global threshold dictates that your hard bounce rate must stay well under 2%.
2%?
Yes. If you send 100,000 emails and 2,000 of them hard bounce, the algorithms deduce that you are not acquiring your list organically.
Because spammers scrape the internet for random addresses or buy decades-old databases off the dark web, which are just riddled with dead accounts.
Exactly. If your bounce rate mimics a spammer's bounce rate, you inherit a spammer's reputation.
And the threshold for spam complaints is astronomically tighter.
Oh, it is brutal. Through automated feedback loops, mailbox providers tell your ESP every time a user clicks the mark as spam or junk button.
What's the acceptable rate there?
Your spam complaint rate must stay under 0.1%.
0.1%. That is one complaint per 1,000 emails sent.
And elite sending programs aim to keep this below
I
0.05%.
mean, 1 in 1,000.
Yeah.
That margin of error is basically non-existent. To protect those metrics, You cannot rely on scrubbing your list after the fact.
Yeah,
You have to play defense at the point of capture.
you have to.
You have to program your sign-up forms, your checkout flows, and your lead gen pop-ups to actively reject high-risk addresses before they ever hit your database.
The first category of high-risk targets you should universally block are role-based email addresses.
Like what?
These are functional aliases like info at, sales at, support at, or webmaster at.
See, a lot of B2B marketers push back on this. They argue that if a small business owner signs up for a webinar using info@theircompany.com, that is a highly qualified lead that they paid to acquire.
It looks like a qualified lead, yes. But the structural mechanics of a role-based address create severe reputational risk.
Because it's not one person.
Exactly. Role-based addresses are almost always distribution lists. When you send a marketing email to info at, it doesn't go to one person, it gets routed to an entire department.
So person A might have signed up for your webinar, but person B, C, and D are also receiving your automated drip campaign in their shared inbox.
And person C has no idea who you are, gets annoyed by the clutter, and hits the spam button.
You are artificially multiplying your risk of a spam complaint because you are forcing your mail onto unverified, non-consenting eyeballs.
Plus, those role-based addresses are published plainly on company contact pages, meaning they are the primary targets for malicious scraping bots.
Right. If your database has a high concentration of support at and webmaster at addresses, the algorithms profile you as a scraper.
You must configure your form validation logic to reject those prefixes and force the user to provide a named inbox, like david@theircompany.com.
The second, even more dangerous category to block are disposable email addresses.
Disposables are a massive headache.
These are services like 10-Minute Mail, Mailinator, or Shark Lasers. They exist solely to help consumers bypass email capture gates without giving up their real identity.
Right. The user wants your 20% discount code or your free PDF download, but they have zero intention of ever receiving a marketing email from you.
So they generate a temporary, anonymous inbox that self-destructs after a set time limit, sometimes hours, sometimes minutes. They grab the discount code and just vanish.
And the immediate problem is that tomorrow, when your automated welcome series tries to send email number 2, that disposable address no longer exists.
It generates a hard bounce.
Yep. A week later, your weekly newsletter tries to reach it. Another hard bounce.
If your marketing strategy relies on heavily gated content or aggressive discount pop-ups, a massive percentage of your daily signups could be disposables, silently pushing your bounce rate over that 2% cliff.
You have to utilize APIs that constantly update lists of known disposable domains. And your forms must check every submission against that list in real time, throwing an error message that says, please use a valid primary email address when a disposable is detected.
This brings up a critical internal dynamic, though. It's not just consumers trying to bypass your forms. Sometimes it's your own team.
Oh, this happens all the time.
I've seen organizations where call center reps or retail associates are given strict daily quotas for email collection. Their performance reviews or bonuses are tied to how many emails they capture at the point of sale.
That is a classic misalignment of incentives.
Right. If you penalize an employee for failing to collect an email, human nature and basic self-preservation dictate that they will simply fabricate the data.
They will rapidly type test at test.com, none at none.com, or fake123@gmail.com into the point of sale system just to clear the screen and hit their numbers.
And every single one of those fabricated addresses is a guaranteed hard bounce. The leadership team thinks they are building a massive, valuable asset, but they are actually incentivizing their own employees to plant ticking time bombs inside the domain reputation.
The integrity of the data must always supersede the sheer velocity of acquisition.
Which perfectly sets up the ultimate tension in list building, the opt-in methodology.
Yeah.
Even if an email address looks perfectly legitimate, passes the syntax check, and isn't a disposable domain, how deeply do we verify the user's intent? This is the core battle between single opt-in SOI and double opt-in DOI.
Single opt-in is frictionless. A user types their address, hits submit, and the backend database immediately flags them as an active subscriber.
Right.
They instantly enter the primary sending pool. But double opt-in introduces a mandatory physical checkpoint. They hit submit, but they are added to a pending list. The system fires a single automated transactional email containing a unique cryptographic link.
And the user must navigate to their inbox, open that specific email, and click the link to confirm their identity and intent. Only then are they moved to the active list.
The marketing argument against double opt-in is entirely based on funnel attrition. Industry data consistently shows that implementing DOI introduces a roughly 20% drop-off rate.
1 in 5 people who fill out your form will never complete the confirmation step.
Right.
If I am a growth marketer, my entire job is optimizing acquisition costs. I am spending serious budget on paid social, Google Ads, and SEO to drive traffic to my landing pages. If you tell me to implement a system that intentionally throws away 20% of the leads I just paid to acquire, it feels like professional malpractice.
I get it. It feels painful on a spreadsheet, but you have to analyze the actual composition of that missing 20%.
Who are we actually losing?
You aren't losing high-intent credit card in hand buyers. That 20% is primarily composed of 3 toxic elements that you actively want to exclude from your infrastructure.
Let's break those elements down. First, typographical errors.
Fat finger mistakes. A legitimate user genuinely wants your content but types at -gmail.com instead of at -gmail.com, or they transpose 2 letters in their corporate domain.
In a single opt-in system, that malformed address goes straight into your active database and instantly hard bounces on the very first send.
Right. But with double opt-in, the confirmation email bounces, the user remains in the pending queue, and your active list stays clean.
Okay, second toxic element. Low-intent freebie seekers. People who want the digital download but will immediately tune out.
Exactly. If they can't be bothered to open a single confirmation email, they are never going to open your weekly newsletters.
Sure.
In a single opt-in model, they bloat your list, ignore your emails, drag down your overall engagement metrics, and eventually hit the spam button when they get tired of seeing your brand name.
And third, the most severe threat. Malicious bots and spam traps.
This is the big one. Automated scripts crawl the internet looking for unprotected web forms. They inject thousands of email addresses into those forms per minute.
And some of those addresses might be honeypots email addresses created by anti-spam organizations specifically to catch senders who don't verify their lists.
If a honeypot gets onto your list via a bot and you send an email to it, the anti-spam organization knows definitively that you are using single opt-in and lack basic security.
They caught you red-handed.
And they can instantly place your IP on a global block list. Double opt-in acts as an impenetrable shield against botnets because bots cannot log into the target inboxes and click the unique confirmation links.
That makes total sense. But if you decide to implement double opt-in, there's an absolute non-negotiable operational rule you must follow. You can only send the confirmation email once.
Once. Just once.
This is where marketers get desperate. They look at that pending queue, they see thousands of unconfirmed emails sitting there, and they set up an automated nagging sequence. Did you forget to confirm? Action required. Confirm your subscription.
Sending multiple confirmation requests is incredibly dangerous, and it triggers catastrophic blocklisting events. We really have to look at the historical precedent here.
You're talking about 2016.
Yes. In 2016, there was a massive industry-rattling event orchestrated by Spamhaus, which is arguably the most powerful anti-spam organization on the planet.
The 2016 Spamhaus event is legendary in deliverability circles. How did the mechanics of that attack actually unfold?
It was a coordinated attack known as subscription bombing. Malicious actors deployed botnets to target thousands of unsecured, single opt-in web forms across the internet.
But instead of injecting fake addresses, they injected the real, legitimate email addresses of high-profile targets.
Right. Government officials, journalists, and corporate executives.
The bots sign these individuals up for tens of thousands of different newsletters, e-commerce alerts, and political lists simultaneously.
The target inboxes were instantly paralyzed by a tsunami of incoming mail. The brands using single opt-in were immediately complicit. They started sending welcome series and promotional blasts to people who never asked for them.
And those brands were swiftly blacklisted.
But the real tragedy of the Spamhaus event was that many brands using double opt-in also got annihilated.
Because of the automated nagging?
Exactly. The bots injected the target's email. The brand sent the initial confirmation request. The target, obviously, ignored it.
So the brand system sent a reminder on day 2. And a third reminder on day 4.
Multiply that by thousands of lists, and the targets were receiving endless waves of please confirm emails.
Spamhaus viewed the aggressive confirmation reminders as a form of harassment entirely equal to spam.
They aggressively blocklisted the IPs and domains of any sender who fired more than a single confirmation request.
The takeaway is absolute. Fire the confirmation email once. If they don't click it, let the record expire.
Let it expire. It's not worth the risk.
Okay, let's look at the reality of the market. Despite everything we just discussed, there are massive, consumer brands, media publishers, and retailers who simply refuse to implement double opt-in. They have decided that maximizing top-of-funnel velocity outweighs the structural risks.
And that's a business decision.
Right. If a listener is running a single opt-in program and refuses to change, how do they survive without a safety net?
Operating single opt-in safely requires you to build robust, invisible fences. You have to compensate for the lack of a confirmation click with heavy back-end validation.
Okay, what's the first layer?
The first layer is stopping the automated scripts. You must implement advanced CAP TCHA protocols on every single entry point.
And we aren't just talking about the annoying click all the crosswalks puzzles.
No, thankfully. Modern systems like Google's Recap TCHA v3 operate invisibly in the background. They analyze the user's mouse movements, typing speed, and IP history to assign a risk score.
If the script behaves like a bot, the form submission is silently dropped before the data ever reaches your ESP.
Exactly. Once you've filtered out the bots, you have to filter out the human error. This is where real-time email validation APIs become mandatory for single opt-in lists.
So when a user types their email and hits submit, the data isn't just dumped into your database.
No, it is instantly routed via an API to a third-party validation service.
This happens in milliseconds. What is the API actually doing during that delay?
It executes a multi-step diagnostic. First, it checks the syntax. Did the user include an @ symbol and a valid top-level domain?
Basic formatting.
Right. Second, it checks the domain's MX records. It pings the DNS servers of the domain provided to verify that it actually possesses the capability to receive mail.
Okay.
Third, it cross-references the domain against constantly updated lists of known disposable providers.
And the final step.
The final step is the SMTT handshake. The API actually reaches out to the receiving mail server, initiates a connection as if it's going to send an email, asks the server, does this specific user inbox exist, and then immediately drops the connection before sending anything.
Wow. If the validation API returns a failure code at any step of that process, your website form instantly rejects the submission and prompts the user to correct their entry.
Yes. Combining invisible CAPI TCHA with real-time API validation removes the fat finger typos and the disposable addresses, allowing you to run a single opt-in program with a fraction of the traditional risk.
So you've locked down the plumbing. You've authenticated your domain with DMRs. You've installed CAPI TCH. You've scrubbed the list. You've survived the opt-in battle. You have a database filled exclusively with real, engaged human beings.
That's a great spot to be in.
You're finally ready to engineer the actual campaign, which is where we hit the final frontier, beating the algorithmic content filters.
Yes. Once your perfectly authenticated email leaves your server and arrives at the gateway, the artificial intelligence takes over.
It has to decide whether this specific message belongs in the primary inbox, the promotions tab, or the spam folder.
And there is an astonishing amount of outdated, superstitious advice circulating about content filtering.
Oh yeah. If you search for how to avoid the spam folder, you will find endless articles from 2012 telling you to avoid using all caps, never use the word free E, avoid exclamation points, and maintain a strict ratio of text to images.
That keyword matching approach is totally obsolete for legitimate B2C marketing. Machine learning models evolved past that a decade ago.
They're smarter than that.
Much smarter. The algorithms understand context. If you are a recognized retail brand sending a Black Friday campaign, using the phrase free shipping or a bunch of exclamation points is not going to trigger a spam filter.
Because the algorithms know that real brands run sales.
Exactly.
So if they aren't looking for spammy words, what are they looking for?
They're looking for structural integrity and behavioral signals. Content filtering today is fundamentally about evaluating the underlying code and the routing mechanics of your links.
The code itself.
Yes. One of the absolute fastest ways to get a legitimate campaign routed to the spam folder is by deploying sloppy HTML.
What constitutes sloppy HTML to a machine learning model?
The algorithms analyze the document object model. They are looking for overly complex, nested table structures, unclosed HTML tags, or massive amounts of inline CSS that bloat the overall file size.
I see this happen when someone drafts an email in Microsoft Word and copies it directly into the ESP's builder.
Oh, that's the worst. It drags hundreds of lines of invisible proprietary XML formatting with it. To a spam filter, that bloated, messy code looks exactly like the crude templates used by amateur spammers.
The code has to be semantic, clean, and lightweight. You want your total HTML payload to be under 100 kilobytes, not
Oh.
just for deliverability, but because clients like Gmail will literally clip the bottom of your email if the code is too heavy.
Which is a huge problem because it hides your unsubscribe link, and that is a massive compliance violation.
Right. But beyond the HTML structure, the most heavily scrutinized elements in your entire email are the hyperlinks.
Links are the primary vector for malicious payloads, so mailbox providers inspect the destination of every single URL in your message.
This leads to a critical operational rule. Never use public URL shorteners.
Never.
Services like bit.ly or tinyurl. We use them constantly on social media platforms like X or Instagram to keep the character count down and track clicks. Why are they so dangerous in the email context?
Because URL shorteners are inherently designed to mask the final destination of a link. Spammers utilize this constantly.
They know that if they place a direct link to a malware download site in an email, the spam filter will instantly scan the domain, recognize the threat, and block the message.
Right. So they hide the malware link behind a bit.ly URL, hoping the filter only sees the legitimate bit.ly domain.
Consequently, mailbox providers treat public URL shorteners with extreme prejudice.
If your marketing team uses a bit.ly link in a campaign to track clicks, you are voluntarily sharing a domain reputation with every scammer and phisher who also uses that free service.
Wow. The algorithms will frequently penalize or outright block your mail simply by association.
You must use the full, unmasked destination URLs. If you need to track clicks, you utilize the native tracking domains provided by your ESP, which route the click through a subdomain you control, like click.yourbrand.com before redirecting to the destination.
Furthermore, the algorithms verify that every link uses secure, encrypted HTTPS protocols. If you link to an unsecured HTTP site, the filter flags it as a security risk for the user.
Exactly. So clean code and transparent, secure links get you past the initial static analysis.
But the dynamic part of the algorithm, the part that constantly shifts your placement from day to day, is governed by engagement metrics.
Yes, engagement. The algorithms crave proof that your audience actually derives value from your presence in their inbox.
Mailbox providers calculate your unique engagement rate internally. They don't care what your overall ESP dashboard says.
No, Google only cares about how Google users interact with your mail. Yahoo only cares about Yahoo users.
And the benchmark you must maintain is a unique open rate of over 10% per provider.
If you send a campaign to 50,000 Gmail addresses and only 4% of them open it, Google's algorithm mathematically deduces that your content is irrelevant to their ecosystem.
They will begin degrading your inbox placement, quietly sliding you into the spam folder to protect their users' attention.
But measuring that engagement has become incredibly complicated because we have to talk about the elephant in the room, Apple's mail privacy protection.
Apple's MPP. It fundamentally shattered the traditional open rate metric.
It really did. Historically, measuring an open was simple. Your ESP embeds a transparent single-pixel image at the bottom of the HTML.
When the user opens the email, their mail client downloads the images, the pixel fires a request back to your server, and the ESP records a human open.
But with the rollout of iOS 15, Apple decided that tracking pixels were an invasion of user privacy.
So when an Apple user opts into MPP, and the vast majority do, Apple intercepts every incoming email before it ever reaches the user's actual device.
Right. Apple routes the email through regional proxy servers. These proxy servers automatically preload and cache all the images in the email, including your tracking pixel.
They do this in the background, whether the user ever opens the email app or not.
Exactly. So it generates a massive wave of fake, algorithmic auto-opens.
Your ESP dashboard might proudly report that your latest campaign achieved a 45% open rate, but in reality, half of those opens were just Apple's proxy servers automatically downloading the payload.
The actual human beings might have just swiped the email into the trash.
You're attempting to navigate a treacherous, highly monitored highway, but your dashboard instruments are basically lying to you.
It's dangerous. If you optimize your sending strategy based on Apple's inflated open rates, you will mistakenly believe your list is highly engaged.
Which leads you to increase your frequency.
And that triggers real spam filters at Google and Yahoo because your actual human engagement is abysmal.
You have to fundamentally reorient how you analyze data. You have to ignore the noise.
Many advanced analytics platforms now segregate the data, attempting to filter out the Apple proxy IPs to give you a real open rate.
But this strategic shift is creating any Apple auto-open, not as a sign of engagement, but merely as a sign of successful delivery to the proxy. To measure true intent, You must prioritize lower funnel metrics.
Clicks are the new opens.
Clicks are the new opens. I love that.
A proxy server cannot simulate a contextual click on a specific product link. If you want to know if an inbox divider views you favorably, look at your unique click-through rates, your active website sessions originating from email, and your direct conversion revenue.
So the algorithms demand clean code and provable human engagement. But there was one final pillar to algorithmic trust, and it revolves around the actual physics of your sending patterns, consistency and volume.
Mailbox algorithms are built to recognize patterns, and they really loathe unpredictability.
If you acquire a dedicated IP address, you are establishing an isolated pipeline. The algorithms expect a steady, predictable flow of data through that pipe.
If your volume is erratic, say you send a newsletter once a week, but then you go completely silent for 2 months during your off-season, the IP goes cold.
The algorithms begin to decay your reputation.
And if you suddenly wake up after 60 days of silence and blast an email to 100,000 subscribers, the sudden, massive spike in volume looks exactly like a compromised server that has been hijacked by a botnet.
The algorithms will instantly throttle your delivery, delaying the messages or routing them to spam until they can verify your identity.
You must maintain a steady pulse. You have to run automated lifecycle campaigns, welcome series, browse abandonment, post-purchase flows that keep a consistent trickle of volume flowing across your IPs every single day, keeping the connections warm.
But this need for consistency creates a terrifying operational challenge around major retail events: Black Friday, Cyber Monday, product launches.
Yes, the spikes.
On a normal Tuesday, you might send 20,000 emails. On Black Friday, your marketing strategy dictates sending 150,000 emails. How do you achieve a 700% spike in volume without triggering the spam filter's automated panic response?
You engineer a volume ramp-up strategy. You do not wait until the morning of Black Friday to increase your load.
You have to condition the algorithms weeks in advance.
Exactly. You map out your sending calendar. 4 weeks out, you artificially increase your frequency, maybe sending an extra targeted campaign, pushing your daily volume to 35,000.
3 weeks out, you bump it to 60,000.
You are gradually expanding the capacity of the pipe. You are demonstrating to the bouncers at the door that your audience is growing, that the engagement is holding steady, and that you are capable of handling heavier traffic responsibly.
By the time Black Friday arrives, the algorithms have observed and validated your steady incremental growth.
When you hit send on that blast, it is processed smoothly because the infrastructure has been conditioned to expect it. It's about meticulously managing the expectations of the machines.
It is incredible how all of these disparate technical elements converge. I mean, we've mapped the digital plumbing of SPF and DKIM. We've configured DMRC to reject spoofing.
We've placed invisible CAPT CHAs and validation APIs at the door to block disposables.
We've purged the bad data to survive the opt-in battle.
And we've re-engineered our HTML and tracking metrics to pacify the machine learning models.
It is an exhaustively complex ecosystem, but it all synthesizes into one defining philosophy. If you are building a business, managing a list, and trying to drive revenue, what is the ultimate realization you have to walk away with after unpacking all of this infrastructure?
Deliverability is not an IT problem. It is the ultimate mathematical measure of subscriber trust and sender discipline.
Trust and discipline.
Every single technical protocol we discussed is simply a mechanism to enforce that trust. Authenticating your domain is about proving you are who you say you are. Blocking bad addresses is about maintaining the integrity of your community. Pacing your holiday sends is about respecting the bandwidth of the network.
Mailbox providers are not your adversaries. They are the digital custodians of their users' attention. They are enforcing boundaries.
Right. If you act like a predictable, respectful guest in the subscriber's digital home, if you prioritize their experience over your immediate vanity metrics, the algorithms will naturally open the velvet rope and ensure your message is delivered.
When you align your operational discipline with the mailbox provider's ultimate goal of protecting the user, the technical rules stop feeling like restrictive burdens and become the foundation of your competitive advantage. You stop driving blindfolded.
You finally have the telemetry to understand exactly why your emails land where they do.
But getting into the primary inbox is only half the battle. Once you bypass the bouncers and secure that prime real estate, how do you mathematically prove that the email is actually working? Just because a message is delivered and clicked doesn't mean it is driving sustainable revenue. Next time We dive into the ultimate metrics for program success, and we will uncover the counterintuitive reason why maximizing the ROI of a single email campaign could actually be destroying the long-term profitability of your entire business.
It's just a wild realization when you finally discover that an entire global industry might be speaking completely the wrong language.
Oh, completely.
Like most businesses, most entrepreneurs, and honestly, a lot of very highly paid marketing agencies, they are tracking their email marketing completely backward.
Yeah, they really are.
And the reason is surprisingly simple, but the implications of it are just staggering.
Yeah.
It's that they're speaking email when they really, they should be speaking business.
Right. And the disconnect between those two languages is, I mean, it's massive.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just create confusion, it leads to some incredibly counterintuitive outcomes that actively, literally bleed money from the bottom line.
Well, everyone in the room is busy patting themselves on the back.
Exactly. High fives all around while the ship is sinking.
Well, I want to focus on one of those counterintuitive outcomes right away.
Mm.
Because there is a paradox here that honestly blew my mind when I first encountered it in our sources for today's deep dive.
It's a fun one.
It is. So think about this as you're listening. Actively trying to maximize your email open rates, which is literally the single metric almost everyone in the industry obsesses over.
Oh, yeah, the holy grail.
Right. Maximizing that can actually destroy your sales conversions. You can increase the number of people looking at your emails and simultaneously bankrupt the campaign.
It sounds completely backward to anyone who has, ever run a basic sales funnel.
Right, because top of funnel means bottom of funnel.
Exactly. We've been culturally trained to believe that more volume at the top automatically equals more revenue at the bottom. But the data tells a completely different, a much darker story about how human psychology actually interacts with our inboxes.
I mean, I'm looking at this data on open rates, and I'm honestly struggling to reconcile it. But before we get deep into the weeds of how maximizing a metric can hurt the bottom line, let's just zoom out for a second.
Good idea.
Today's deep dive is entirely focused on email metrics and program success. We're drawing from the core philosophies of Chapter 3 of Chad S. White's Email Marketing Rules.
Yeah, a fantastic source.
Really is. So for anyone listening who is interested in business, entrepreneurship, or just, maximizing the ROI of a marketing budget, this conversation is going to fundamentally demystify the data for you.
It really pulls back the curtain.
It does. We are going to reveal the mechanics behind which metrics actually drive long-term revenue and which ones are just dangerous vanity numbers leading you straight into a brick wall.
And the shift we have to make here, it isn't about ignoring data or throwing away your analytics dashboard entirely.
Right. We're not flying blind.
No, not at all. It's about looking at the right data through a completely different lens. Because the moment you stop optimizing for the inbox and start optimizing for the balance sheet, your entire strategy changes overnight.
Let's put that new lens on immediately then. The foundation of this entire philosophy is about translating email success into business success. The core concept is that we just have to stop reporting isolated campaign activities to leadership. Like stop walking into the boardroom, pointing to a slide and saying, hey, we got a 30% open rate on Tuesday's blast.
Which happens every single day.
Every day. And
Yes.
instead, we need to start reporting on actual business outcomes. Things like sales conversions, average order size, and return on investment.
Yes.
The focus has to shift from maximizing the results of a single isolated campaign to maximizing the lifetime value of a subscriber.
And that boardroom scenario you just mentioned is where the friction really starts. Think about the power dynamics in those meetings.
Okay, set the scene.
So the marketing team comes in, and they are speaking email, right? They talk about click-throughs, open rates, deliverability, bounce rates.
All the jargon.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the CEO and the CFO are sitting there speaking business. They only care about revenue, profit margins, and customer acquisition costs.
Right, the stuff that actually keeps the lights on.
Exactly. So when you report activities instead of outcomes, you create this massive translation gap. The blunt truth is that leadership doesn't actually care if an email was opened.
They really don't.
No. They only care if that open moved the needle for the company's financial health.
It makes total sense when you frame it like that.
Yeah.
I like to think about it like judging a restaurant.
Okay, I like this.
Judging a business strictly by its email open rates is exactly like judging a restaurant strictly by how many people stop on the sidewalk to look at the menu posted in the window.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. Sure, getting their attention is nice. It means the menu has good graphic design, the font is legible, whatever. But it doesn't matter at all if nobody actually walks through the door, sits down at a table, orders a meal, and actually pays the bill.
Yeah, you can't pay your kitchen staff with menu looks.
Exactly. You pay them with revenue.
And that analogy holds up perfectly when you start looking at the mechanics of subscriber lifetime value, or LTV.
LTV, right?
Right, because LTV is the metric that captures the people who actually sit down and eat over and over again.
The regulars.
The regulars, exactly. And while calculating it sounds like something you need a data science degree to pull off, the underlying math is actually remarkably straightforward.
Walk me through it.
So you simply take the average monthly revenue, or even better, the average monthly profit generated per subscriber,
Okay.
and you multiply that by their average retention time in months. Basically, how long they stay engaged on your list before they inevitably unsubscribe or just go completely dormant.
Okay, let's put some hard numbers to that so we can, kind of see how it plays out in a spreadsheet.
Let's do it.
Let's say I run an online shoe company. If my average subscriber brings in $2 a month in profit, and our data shows they usually stay on the list for 20 months before they get bored of shoes and unsubscribe,
Right.
their individual lifetime value is $40. 2 times 20.
Right. That $40 is your baseline. And once you know that number, it completely changes how you view the success or failure of a single campaign.
How so?
Because marketers frequently fall into this dangerous campaign-by-campaign mentality.
And the constant treadmill.
The treadmill. Usually it's driven by intense short-term pressure. It's the end of the quarter, sales are down, the CEO is breathing down the CMO's neck.
I feel stressed just hearing that.
Right. So the marketing team decides to blast the entire list with a highly aggressive, borderline clickbaity email offer.
Last chance, 90% off, open now.
Exactly that subject line. And maybe it works for that one Tuesday. They get a massive spike in sales and they hit their quarterly quota.
I'm guessing that spike comes with a pretty severe hangover, though. The data suggests there's a massive hidden cost to that Tuesday victory.
Oh, the hangover can literally cripple the program's future because that aggressive high-pressure gimmick, it damages trust.
Right.
Subscribers feel annoyed, they feel overwhelmed, or they just feel tricked by the clickbait. So what happens? A significant chunk of them hit the unsubscribe button.
They're out.
They are out. You've just artificially shortened their time on the list. So going back to your shoe company example.
The $40 LTV.
Right. If you annoy a subscriber so much that they leave after 10 months instead of 20, you just slash their lifetime value from $40 down to $20.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You traded a long-term compounding asset for a short-term single-day blip on a chart.
So I might be throwing a pizza party on Friday because we had a record-breaking Tuesday, completely ignorant of the fact that I just burned thousands of dollars of future revenue to get it.
That's exactly it.
I essentially borrowed money from next year's budget at an exorbitant interest rate.
That is the exact financial reality of the situation. The campaign-by-campaign mentality is inherently destructive because it ignores the relationship you were trying to build.
Yeah.
Because email is an intimate channel. You are in their personal space. And it's vital to recognize the sheer financial power of protecting that space. Traditionally, email boasts a staggering 40-to-1 return on investment. $40 back for every $1 spent. That is astronomically high compared to almost any other marketing channel like paid search or, social media ads.
I do want to push back on that 40-to-1 number, though.
Okay, go for it.
Because if the ROI is really that high, why wouldn't a company just dump their entire marketing budget into email?
Yeah.
The source material talks about this concept of the ROI curve. How does the math actually work as you scale up?
So the ROI curve is a brilliant financial concept that trips up a lot of CFOs. Because the initial ROI is so high, some companies get complacent.
They get lazy.
Exactly. They say, hey, we're spending $1,000 a month on our email platform and we're making $40,000 back. We have a 40-to-1 ROI. We're geniuses. Let's not touch anything.
Right.
But the curve illustrates that as you invest in more sophisticated email programs, things like advanced predictive segmentation, automated behavioral triggers, highly personalized dynamic content, your raw return on investment ratio might actually dip.
Wait, walk me through that. Why would the ratio go down if the program is getting smarter and more sophisticated?
Because the denominator, your investment, is growing faster than the proportional efficiency of the returns, even though the absolute returns are massive.
Okay, I think I need an example.
Sure. You might hire a dedicated email manager, upgrade to an enterprise-level software platform, and pay for better data analytics. Your costs went from $1,000 a month to $10,000 a month.
Ouch. Ouch. Okay, a big jump.
Right. But your returns might jump from 40,000 to 200,000.
Ah, I see the math now.
Yeah.
So if I spend 10,000 to make 200,000, my new ROI ratio is only 20 to 1.
Exactly.
It dropped by half. But my actual physical pile of profit just went from $39,000 to $190,000.
That is the crux of the ROI curve. You are maximizing the total profit, not just the efficiency ratio.
Right.
Because a 40-to-1 ratio sounds great in a slide deck, but you can't take a ratio to the bank.
No, you definitely cannot.
You take dollars to the bank. That's why you can't starve your way to email marketing success. Chronically underfunding an email program just to maintain a high vanity ROI keeps you permanently stuck on the low end of that profit curve.
So if I'm a marketer listening to this, my immediate action item tomorrow morning shouldn't be tweaking my subject lines. It should be sitting down with whatever data I have to start calculating our subscriber lifetime value.
Yes, absolutely.
Even if the data is messy and I have to use a subset of our best subscribers as a proxy just to get a baseline, that LTV needs to become the true North Star metric.
It's the only way.
When the team is debating a new campaign idea, the only question that actually matters is, will this increase or decrease the lifetime value of our subscribers? That instantly cuts through all the noise of open rates and click-throughs.
It acts as an incredible filter for bad ideas. It forces everyone in the room to treat subscribers like long-term financial investments rather than, quick disposable cash grabs.
So if we are focusing entirely on the lifetime value of the subscribers who actually stay, we have to confront the dark side of that equation.
The churn.
Yes. What happens when we look at the data for the people who actively want to leave? Because human nature tells us to focus on the positive, right? We want to look at the sales, the clicks, the glowing reviews. Why should we bother dedicating precious time and resources to tracking the people who actively don't want to hear from us?
Well, it is a very natural instinct to want to look away from the bad news, especially when the overall dashboard is flashing green.
Right.
But ignoring your opt-outs actually blinds you to the long-term existential threats to your entire program. The negative metrics, unsubscribes, hard bounces, spam complaints, and a flatlining list growth rate, they're the absolute best early warning systems you have.
Like the canary in the coal mine.
They are the canary in the coal mine.
But how so? If my list is growing by 5,000 people a month, why should I care if 500 people unsubscribe? I'm still at 4,500 people. Net positive, right?
Let's look at the mechanics of how these numbers can actively deceive you, especially during busy retail seasons. The math can create a very dangerous illusion.
Okay.
Let's say it's November, heading into Black Friday and the holiday shopping rush.
The craziest time of the year.
Exactly. You are naturally going to send a significantly higher volume of emails than you did in, say, September. In September, maybe you sent 4 emails a month. In November, you might be sending 15.
Right, the volume skyrockets because we're trying to capture that holiday spend.
Now, if you are only looking at your unsubscribe rate, which is the percentage of total emails sent that result in an opt-out, that rate is very likely going to drop in November.
Oh, I see where this is going. Because the denominator is getting huge.
The denominator is inflating massively. You sent 100,000 emails in September and got 1,000 unsubscribes. That's a 1% rate. In November, you send 500,000 emails. The sheer volume waters down the percentage. You look at your dashboard, see the rate drop to 0.5%, and you think, amazing, our unsubscribe rate went down. People must be loving our holiday gift guides.
But if I look at the actual body count.
Right. If you look at the raw number of unsubscribes, the absolute total of people leaving your list, you might see that 2,500 people unsubscribed in November.
Yikes.
Your rate was cut in half, but your actual list churn more than doubled. You are bleeding out your audience, but the seasonal spike in volume is mathematically hiding the damage from you.
That is genuinely terrifying. You're bleeding out internally, but the dashboard says your heart rate is totally fine.
That is exactly why looking at negative metrics as a percentage is a trap. You have to track the raw numbers, the absolute totals of unsubscribes, bounces, and complaints every single month. It is the only way to reveal the true toll your aggressive campaigns are taking on the foundation of your list size.
Okay, that makes total sense for tracking the silent killers. We have to look at the absolute numbers to spot hidden seasonal churn.
Yes.
But there's another layer to this audience analysis, which is what the sources call the golden minority. How does the Pareto principle apply here?
The Pareto principle, the classic 80-20 rule, is incredibly prevalent in email marketing. And honestly, often it's even more extreme than 80-20.
Like 90-10.
Yeah, exactly. A very small minority of your subscribers, sometimes just 10 or 20% of the list, is going to generate the vast majority of your revenue and profits. These are your absolute VIPs,
The
the
whales.
whales,
Yeah.
the recent buyers, the frequent loyal shoppers, the high-value purchasers who buy the premium products.
The people basically keeping the lights on and paying the company's rent.
Exactly, those people. Now, consider a scenario where you send out a highly aggressive, discount-heavy campaign.
Yep.
The overall numbers come back and they look fine. The general open rate is standard. The general unsubscribe rate is normal. You might report that campaign as a standard success.
Right, checking the boxes.
But what if that specific aggressive messaging really alienated your VIP segment? What if your best customers found the discount messaging cheap, annoying, or off-brand, and a disproportionate number of them hit the unsubscribe button?
Oh. Then the campaign is a catastrophic failure, even if the spreadsheet has a green check mark next to it at the top level.
It is a disaster that will impact your revenue for months or even years. Because losing an inactive subscriber who hasn't bought anything since 2019 is practically a favor to your deliverability metrics. It cleans your list.
Sure.
But losing a VIP subscriber who reliably spends $500 a quarter, that hurts. If you aren't segmenting out those VIPs and tracking exactly how they specifically react to your individual campaigns, you are flying completely blind.
That is such a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
For anyone managing a CRM, it's not just about how many people you lose, it's entirely about who you are losing. I think a lot of marketers just look at the aggregate data. But if I'm managing this, I need to go into the platform, create a specific dynamic audience segment that only includes my top 20% of purchasers, and I need to run a separate negative metrics report just for them after every major campaign.
You absolutely do.
Right. If a campaign performs poorly with the VIPs, I need to rethink my messaging strategy immediately, regardless of how the rest of the list behaved.
Protecting your most valuable assets has to be the priority. And understanding how those assets behave naturally transitions us into the complexities of actually measuring their behavior. Because it is nowhere near as simple as tracking a click.
Right, and that brings us to a really fascinating illusion in digital marketing. We have this built-in perception that digital is flawlessly trackable.
Oh, the myth of perfect attribution.
Yes, a click is a click, a pixel fires, the database logs it, and we have perfect attribution. But the core concept we need to explore here is that despite being highly trackable, over 50% of your email response might be going completely unmeasured. That is a massive blind spot for an industry obsessed with data.
50% is a conservative estimate in some industries. It is a massive blind spot. And it stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of human behavior. We design tracking systems assuming that humans behave like robots.
We just click the link and buy the thing immediately.
Exactly, cleanly following a designated tracking link from an email straight to a checkout cart.
But humans are messy. They don't do that. I know I certainly don't.
Tell me how you shop.
Sometimes I see a promotional email on my phone while I'm in line for coffee. I read it, I close it, and then later that afternoon I drive to the brand's physical retail store offline to buy the item.
Yep.
Or I see the email on my phone, remember the brand name, and later that night I type their website URL directly into my desktop browser without ever clicking the link in the email.
Very common.
Or I just forward the email to my spouse, who then goes and buys it on their own device.
And in every single one of those messy human scenarios, the email did the heavy lifting. The email generated the awareness, provided the incentive, and it drove the sale.
Right.
But because the final action didn't stem from a direct click on a tracked link, the email platform gets absolutely zero credit in your analytics dashboard.
The system thinks the email failed.
Completely.
Right.
The direct traffic gets the credit, or the retail store gets the credit.
I think about it like seeing a billboard on a highway. If I see a giant billboard for a new burger joint, and I take the next exit, drive to the restaurant, and buy a burger, the billboard company cannot attach a tracking pixel to my car.
Right. They can't log your license plate in their analytics.
Exactly. They can't definitively prove in a spreadsheet that the billboard caused my specific purchase.
Yeah.
But mathematically, historically, and intuitively, we know that billboard drives foot traffic.
Yes.
Email has that exact same hidden ambient influence. We just forget about it because we are so spoiled by the clicks we actually can track.
The billboard effect of an email is very real. The brand impression, the subject line hovering in the inbox, the quick glance at the hero image before deleting it, it all influences consumer behavior, even if it doesn't generate a measurable digital click.
So this raises a very difficult operational question.
Let's hear it.
If we acknowledge that we can't track it directly through pixels, how do we actually measure this hidden influence so we can justify our budgets to leadership?
Well, the sources outline a specific methodology for this, but I have to admit, when I first read it, I immediately thought about how hard it would be to implement in the real world.
You're talking about the withhold study, right? Also known as the universal control group.
That's the one. It is the absolute gold standard for proving incremental lift. But you're right, it requires an immense amount of corporate discipline.
How does it work?
The mechanics of it are straightforward, but the politics are tough. You take a random, statistically significant segment of your entire subscriber list, usually between 1 and 10%, depending on your total volume.
All right.
And you deliberately do not send them any promotional emails for a set period, typically an entire fiscal quarter, about 3 months.
You just leave them completely in the dark.
Completely in the dark. They get transactional emails like shipping receipts, of course, but absolutely zero marketing.
Wow.
And then at the end of the 3 months, you analyze the data. You compare the total cross-channel purchasing behavior of that holdout group to the behavior of the subscribers who did receive your regular drumbeat of emails.
The control versus the test.
Exactly. You look at their total spend across every touch point, regardless of whether that spend came from a direct URL, an offline physical store visit, or an organic Google search.
I can see why the data would be bulletproof. Because if the group getting the emails is spending 20% more overall than the group kept in the dark, you have mathematically proven the true holistic value of your email program.
You've quantified the billboard effect.
Right, you've captured the untrackable parts. But let me push back on the reality of this.
I figured you would.
If I go to my VP of sales and say, hey, to prove my metrics are right, I'm going to deliberately stop marketing to 10% of our active database during Q3, they're going to lose their mind. They have quotas to hit.
Yeah.
How do you justify taking that hit to revenue just for an experiment?
It is a brutal conversation to have with the sales team, which is why it often requires CEO or CFO intervention to mandate it.
Yeah, you need top cover for that.
You really do. The justification is that you are trading a short-term fractional dip in revenue for long-term strategic clarity. It filters out the baseline sales, the sales that would have happened organically anyway, and isolates the true incremental lift generated by the email channel.
Right.
It is the absolute bully way to build a bulletproof business case for expanding your email budget. When you show a CFO a properly run, statistically valid withhold study, they stop arguing with you about open rates. They immediately see the leverage of the channel and start asking how much more budget you need to scale the program.
That makes sense. It's painful medicine, but it cures the attribution disease.
Well said.
Now, beyond the billboard effect, there's another illusion of measurement here, which is the timeline, the long tail of email.
Oh, this is a big one.
I think we are culturally conditioned to view email as an instant, real-time medium. You hit send at 9 a.m., the numbers spike by noon, and 24 hours later, the campaign is essentially dead and buried.
That's the conventional wisdom, and it dictates how most marketing teams run their weekly reporting. But the data tells a much more nuanced story. Email campaigns have a surprisingly resilient long tail.
Explain that.
Yes. The first few hours will give you enough statistical data to determine the winner of an A/B subject line test. And yes, the first few days will give you the vast majority of your initial response curve, but emails continue to generate very real, measurable results long after you hit send.
Why is that? What is the psychology behind someone interacting with an email 3 weeks late?
It's because of how consumers actually use their inboxes. We treat our inboxes as personal archives, to-do lists, and localized search engines.
Oh, that's true.
Think about your own behavior. How often have you remembered a sale from a specific brand, gone into your inbox 2 weeks later, searched the brand's name, and clicked on an old buried email just to retrieve the promo code?
I do that constantly, especially for big purchases. I'll flag an email on a Tuesday while I'm at work, completely ignore it, and let it sit there until Saturday morning when I actually have the time and mental bandwidth to sit down and shop.
That behavior is incredibly common. And because of that delayed interaction, a campaign's open rate can actually increase by up to 5%, and its click rate can increase by up to 10% in the month after you initially sent it.
A whole month later.
A month later. And more importantly, this is the critical part because those late clicks are driven by exceptionally high intent, right? The person actively remembered you and went searching for your offer.
They are highly motivated to buy at that exact moment.
Exactly. So the conversion rates on that long-tail traffic are often significantly higher than the initial blast.
So if my boss asks for a campaign report on Friday for an email I sent on Monday, and I just pull the numbers right then and there, I am severely shortchanging the credit that email deserves.
Yes.
I'm reporting the initial spike, but I'm completely ignoring the high-converting long tail.
You are leaving significant, highly profitable revenue off your scorecard.
That feels like a massive operational error.
It is.
If I'm taking notes on this, the immediate implementation is twofold. First, I need to start laying the groundwork to run a withhold study on a small percentage of the list. It might take months to get buy-in from leadership, but it is the ultimate proof of value.
Definitely.
Second, and this is something I can do today, I need to always refresh my campaign data a few months later. Before I walk into an annual review or a big budget meeting for next year, I need to update the numbers on our historical campaigns.
Always refresh the data.
Right. I shouldn't just rely on the reports I pulled 48 hours after hitting send. I will likely find those campaigns performed significantly better and generated much more revenue than I originally claimed.
It's entirely about claiming the full rightful credit for the heavy lifting your channel is doing. Now, having established how to properly measure the deep, hidden value of a campaign, I think we have to tackle the elephant in the room.
Yes, the paradox I tease at the very beginning of the deep dive, the truth about open rates and the critical difference between surface metrics and deep metrics.
The great debate.
Exactly. The core concept here is that open rates are a deeply flawed, inherently deceptive metric that do not correlate well with actual business success.
Yeah.
But, and this is a big but, they still serve highly specific diagnostic purposes when used correctly.
They do. They have a place.
So let's unpack the paradox. Everyone obsesses over open rates. It's the first number on every platform's dashboard. But the data shows that actively trying to maximize opens can physically lower my sales conversions. Walk me through the mechanics of how maximizing a top-of-funnel metric actually strangles the bottom of the funnel.
It is the ultimate email marketing trap, and it catches incredibly smart people all the time. It's based on a fundamental, systemic misunderstanding of how a marketing funnel actually operates in the real world.
Okay, tell me where we go wrong.
We tend to think linearly. If we get more people in the top of the funnel, more opens, we will mathematically, inevitably, get more people at the bottom, more conversions.
Right, the funnel gets wider at the top, so the bottom must get wider too.
But that assumes all openers are created equal, and they absolutely are not.
Okay, let's build a scenario around this. Let's call it the open bait paradox.
Let's imagine you are writing a subject line for a standard promotional email. You need to hit a high open rate, so you decide to use something incredibly short, aggressively vague, and highly mysterious.
Give me an example.
Something like, "You won't believe this," or "We need to talk," or simply just the word, "Hey."
Oh, I get those all the time from politicians and brands. They are infuriating. But I have to admit, I do click on them sometimes, just to see what the trick is.
That is exactly why marketers use them. They work incredibly well at generating initial opens. They aggressively exploit our natural human curiosity and our fear of missing out.
FOMO is powerful.
It is. So you hit send, and your open rate skyrockets to 45%. You're high-fiving the team. You think you're a copywriting genius. But what happens next?
The letdown.
The letdown. The consumer opens the email, fully expecting something shocking, urgent, or highly personal based on the tone of the subject line, and instead they are greeted by a standard, boring promotional offer for 15% off athletic socks.
Right. There is a massive, jarring disconnect between the promise of the subject line and the reality of the content.
The psychological whiplash is severe. They feel tricked. You successfully attracted a massive amount of curious openers, but what your business actually needed to generate revenue were interested openers.
That's a huge difference. Curious versus interested.
Because the curious openers feel manipulated and bait and switch, they immediately close the email, delete it, or worse, they hit the spam button out of spite. They absolutely do not click the link to buy the socks. Your click-through rate plummets, your brand trust is damaged, and your actual sales conversions hit rock bottom.
So by optimizing entirely for the vanity metric at the top of the funnel, I completely destroyed the trust required to secure the conversion at the bottom of the funnel.
You sacrifice the sale for the sake of the open. A winning subject line shouldn't just encourage the right people to open. It has a secondary, equally important job. It should actually dissuade the wrong people from opening.
Wait, expand on that. Dissuading people from opening. That goes against every instinct a marketer has.
I know it sounds crazy, but think about it. If I am fundamentally not interested in buying athletic socks today, a clear, descriptive subject line about an athletic sock sale allows me to safely ignore the email without feeling tricked.
Right, you just scroll past it.
Exactly. My trust in your brand remains perfectly intact for tomorrow, when I might actually need socks. A good subject line acts as a filter, not a dragnet. It qualifies the audience before they even open the email.
That is a massive paradigm shift. A good subject line is a filter. This perfectly illustrates the difference between what the sources call surface metrics and deep metrics.
The distinction is vital. Surface metrics are things like new subscriber counts, total list size, general web traffic, and open rates. They look fantastic on a bar chart, they are easy to report, but they do not pay the bills.
And the deep metrics.
Deep metrics are things like active, engaged subscribers, email-specific sales conversions, and subscriber lifetime value. You have to force your team to look past the surface to see the actual, tangible business impact.
And the problem with the open rate isn't just psychological, is it? It's not just about open bait. The metric itself, from a purely technical software standpoint, is fundamentally broken.
It is deeply, perhaps irreparably flawed from a technical standpoint. To understand why, you have to understand how an open is actually tracked.
Okay, take us under the hood.
An open is only registered by your software if a tracking pixel, a tiny, invisible one-by-one image embedded in the email code, loads on the user's screen.
Just one single pixel.
One pixel. The problem is, many email clients and corporate firewalls block images by default to save bandwidth or protect privacy. So a subscriber could receive your email, open it, read the entire text payload, and even click a link. But if they didn't explicitly instruct their email client to load images, the tracking pixel never fires. You get absolutely zero credit for the open.
So in that scenario, the software is vastly undercounting my real opens.
It's worse than just undercounting. You're actually losing the behavioral context of a large segment of your audience. But then it gets entirely complicated by the flip side of the technology, which is things like Apple's mail privacy protection, or MPP.
I've heard so much panic about this. How does Apple's system break it in the other direction?
Apple MPP fundamentally changed the industry. When a user opts into this feature on their iPhone or Mac, Apple servers step in as a middleman.
Like a proxy.
Exactly, like a proxy. When you send an email to that user, Apple automatically prefetches the email and downloads all the images, including your invisible tracking pixel, onto their own proxy servers in the background.
Before the user even sees it.
Before they ever see it. It does this automatically for every email, regardless of whether the human user ever actually looks at the message.
Oh, wow. So Apple servers are just pinging my software, triggering the pixel, and making my dashboard think a human opened the email, when in reality, the email is just sitting unread in their inbox.
That is exactly what is happening. It floods your analytics dashboard with fake auto-generated machine opens. So on one hand, you are massively undercounting real opens because of legacy image blocking.
Right.
And on the other hand, you are massively overcounting fake opens because of modern privacy features. The metric is a statistical mess. It is basically a random number generator at this point.
Given all of that, the psychology of open bait, the undercounting, the fake Apple opens, should we just throw the open rate in the trash? Should I just remove it from my dashboard entirely and stop looking at it?
No, and this is where nuance is incredibly important. The authors strongly defend the open rate, but only for highly specific diagnostic purposes. It is a terrible, dangerous metric for measuring business success, but it has highly valid operational uses.
Like what? Where does it actually provide value?
First, it's valuable if your primary goal isn't direct transactional sales. For instance, in complex B2B marketing, healthcare communications, or media publishing, where the primary goal of the email is simply engagement, brand awareness, or education.
So when there's nothing to actually buy in the email.
Exactly. In those specific cases, opens are a more relevant, albeit flawed, indicator of top-of-funnel attention.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, and this is the most crucial use case, it is mathematically necessary for calculating CTR click-to-open rate.
How is that different from a standard click-through rate?
A standard click-through rate divides the number of clicks by the total number of emails delivered. CTR divides the number of clicks by the number of emails opened.
Oh, so it's a subset.
Right. This is a brilliant diagnostic metric because it isolates the effectiveness of the actual body content of your email. It tells you, of the people who actually saw the inside of this email, how many were persuaded by the copy and design to take action.
It measures the alignment.
It measures the alignment between the promise of your subject line and the delivery of your internal content.
Oh, I see the leverage there. So if my open rate is huge, but my C tier is tiny. I know exactly what happened. I fell into the open bait trap. My subject line wrote a massive check that my body copy couldn't cash.
Bingo!
The audience got inside, realized they were tricked, and bounced.
It is the ultimate diagnostic tool for alignment. And finally, there's a very practical business use case. If you sell advertising space inside your emails, like many large newsletters do, you still need to report open rates to calculate ad impressions and justify your internal ad rates to your sponsors.
Because sponsors still buy based on eyeballs.
Exactly. They need to see the reach.
So the operational takeaway here requires a major mindset shift. We need to treat open rates as a diagnostic tool for top-of-funnel audience engagement, or use it as a variable to calculate CTR.
Yes.
But we must never, ever treat it as the ultimate measure of a campaign's success. We have to judge our subject lines by the deep metrics, the clicks, the conversions, the actual revenue they generate, not the opens.
That's the golden rule.
If subject line A gets half the opens of subject line B, but generates double the actual sales, subject line A is the winner. End of discussion.
Recognizing what a winner looks like in your specific context perfectly sets up our final key idea. Because to know if a metric is good or bad, you first have to know what game you are actually playing.
Yes, this brings us to defining your mission and KPIs. The core concept here is that every industry is unique. There is absolutely no one-size-fits-all metric in digital marketing.
Right, it doesn't exist.
A business has to define a specific, formalized email marketing mission statement and establish key performance indicators, or KPIs, that perfectly match one of 4 primary program types.
This is critical.
Now, if I'm an entrepreneur or a marketing director listening to this, how do I figure out exactly which of these 4 buckets I fall into? Because if I choose the wrong one, I'm going to spend the next year optimizing for the wrong outcomes.
It is the most important strategic decision you can make because it dictates every tactical move that follows. Let's break down the 4 main buckets because their dashboards look radically different from one another.
Okay, let's go. Bucket number 1.
Bucket number 1 is the revenue-driven program. This is your classic B2C, retail, or e-commerce brand. Direct-to-consumer products, apparel, electronics. Their primary overriding goal is immediate transactional sales directly from the inbox.
So their dashboard is heavily focused on the cash register. They are tracking total revenue, profit margins, average order size, and the subscriber lifetime value we broke down earlier.
They live and die by the direct financial return. Now contrast that with bucket number 2, which is the lead-driven program. This is typically B2B companies, complex financial services, enterprise software, or anyone selling high-ticket, high-consideration items.
Right, because nobody is buying a $50,000 piece of industrial factory equipment directly from a buy now button in an email. The sales cycle is way too complex for that.
Exactly. So their email mission isn't to get the sale directly. The mission is to nurture a long-term relationship, educate the prospect, and eventually generate highly qualified leads to hand off to the human sales team.
So email is the assist, not the goal.
Yes. Their KPIs look completely different from the e-commerce brand. They are tracking marketing qualified leads, or MQLs, sales qualified leads, the total dollar value of the sales pipeline generated by email touchpoints, and the time it takes to accelerate a deal to close. They use email to build intent, not to close the transaction.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. The e-commerce brand wants a transaction today. The B2B brand wants a conversation tomorrow. What's the third bucket?
Bucket number 3 is the retention-driven program. Think of subscription services, SaaS software companies, streaming platforms, or B2B service providers on retainer. Their goal isn't just to win you once, it's to keep you paying month after month, year after year.
So their primary enemy is churn. They are fighting to keep the lifetime value high by extending the retention months.
Exactly. So their KPIs are heavily focused on usage metrics and customer satisfaction. They track monthly active users, annual recurring revenue, subscription renewal rates, and this is a massive, often overlooked one. They use email to proactively reduce customer service call volume.
Wait, explain that one. How does email reduce call volume?
If a SaaS company creates a brilliant, automated onboarding email sequence that successfully answers a new user's technical questions before that user gets frustrated and has to call the support desk, that is a massive financial win.
Oh, because support calls cost a lot of money to staff.
Exactly. Reducing those calls saves the company a fortune, even if the email didn't directly generate a new sale.
That's a phenomenal point. Saving $1 in operational costs is just as valuable to the bottom line as making a new dollar in sales. And the fourth bucket.
Bucket number 4 is the engagement-driven program. This is often media companies, large news publishers, or consumer packaged goods, brands manufacturers who sell through massive retail distributors and don't have a direct transactional relationship with the end consumer.
Like a massive soda company. I don't go to their corporate website to buy a single can of soda. I buy it at the local grocery store.
Right, so they cannot track a direct email-to-sale conversion. It's impossible. Instead, their mission is top-of-mind brand awareness, consumer education, and fierce loyalty.
Okay, so what numbers are they looking at?
Their KPIs are things like time spent on their website, the number of articles read per session, social media engagement generated from email links, and overall brand evangelism. They are using email to build a community, not a cash register.
Okay, so that covers the 4 distinct buckets: revenue, lead, retention, and engagement. But looking at the modern corporate landscape, can a complex enterprise-level company be in more than one of these buckets at the same time?
Absolutely. And as companies scale, they almost always develop complex hybrid architectures.
Like having different departments run different programs.
Exactly. A large enterprise B2B company, for example, might have a lead-driven arm of their email program designed strictly for new customer acquisition, nurturing cold prospects until they are ready to talk to a sales rep.
Right.
But simultaneously, they might have a completely separate, retention-driven arm that sends entirely different emails to their current active client base to ensure they renew their massive annual contracts and understand new product features.
That sounds like a recipe for a reporting disaster if they aren't careful. You have to be incredibly intentional about which metrics you are holding which specific campaigns accountable to. You wouldn't judge a retention-focused onboarding email by how many new MQL leads it generated. That would be absurd.
It would be absurd, but it happens every day in boardrooms across the world.
Seriously.
Oh, all the time. That's why having a formalized written mission statement is so critical. It prevents the cross-contamination of your metrics. It ensures everyone is judging the right data against the right goals.
If I'm listening to this, the action item here is to force a moment of extreme clarity within the organization. It's time to sit down with all the major stakeholders, the CEO, the VP of Sales, the Director of Customer Success, and literally write out a formal email marketing mission statement. Pick your primary bucket.
Put it in writing.
And then physically post the corresponding KPIs on the wall of the marketing department. Make them the wallpaper on your team's computers. Make sure every single person involved in the email program, from the copywriter to the data analyst, knows exactly what game they're actually playing.
Yes.
You cannot afford to have a copywriter optimizing for open rates when the CFO is optimizing for pipeline value.
When everyone in the organization understands the true mission, the daily tactical decisions like what subject line to use or how aggressively to segment the list become infinitely easier to make. The mission statement acts as the ultimate tiebreaker.
Let's pull all of these massive concepts together. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, completely rethinking how we measure success.
You covered a lot.
We started by realizing the dangerous paradox that maximizing open rates can actually destroy your sales if you fall into the trap of open bait. We broke down the math to show that the ultimate goal is maximizing subscriber lifetime value, not just winning the revenue of a single Tuesday broadcast. We uncovered the silent, deadly killers of hidden seasonal churn and the critical importance of protecting the golden minority of VIPs who actually fund the company. We talked about the untrackable billboard effect of email and how to prove it using withhold studies. And we just broke down the 4 distinct missions an email program can have, from revenue to retention.
It's a whole new way to look at the channel.
It really is. If we have to synthesize all of these distinct ideas into one core philosophy, one memorable insight that represents the absolute soul of this deep dive, what is it?
Well, if I have to boil this entire philosophy down to one guiding principle, it's this. True email marketing success is never found in the surface-level vanity metrics of a single broadcast. True success is found by systematically nurturing the long-term value of a subscriber through deep, relentlessly business-aligned measurement.
That hits the nail on the head.
The great irony of this entire industry is that the numbers that matter, the absolute most subscriber lifetime value, incremental offline lift, long-term VIP retention, are often the hardest, most tedious, and politically difficult metrics to track.
They require real work.
They take time, they take immense corporate discipline, and they require you to purposefully look past the instant gratification of a real-time dashboard. But they're the only numbers that actually keep the business alive, profitable, and growing over the long haul.
It's the exact difference between eating a candy bar for a quick 15-minute sugar rush and eating a balanced, nutritious meal for long-term health. The vanity metrics, the opens, the clicks, they give you a rush. They make you feel good in the moment. But the deep metrics give you a healthy, sustainable business.
If you are speaking email to your leadership, you are speaking the wrong language, and you will eventually lose their trust and your budget. You have to translate those clicks and opens into the language of business: revenue, retention, and return on investment.
So we spent this entire deep dive figuring out exactly how to measure your own internal success. You now understand the mechanics of how to build your dashboard, how to identify your true KPIs, and how to track the deep metrics that actually matter to the balance sheet.
Right.
But there is one massive, lingering question left hanging in the air.
What's the final piece of the puzzle?
Now that you know exactly how to measure your own internal success, how do you know if you are actually beating the competition?
Ah, right. Context.
Are your numbers actually good, or are you just celebrating mediocrity in a vacuum? If your LTV is $40, is that amazing? Or is your competitor at $400? Well, we will dive into the dangerous, often misleading illusions of benchmarks and competitive intelligence next time.
That conversation is going to completely change how you look at those annual industry reports.
I can't wait to unpack it. But until then, I want to leave you with one final thought, circling back to where we started today. We like our data to be clean, binary, and instantly visible. We want the dashboard to just point and say, there is the profit right there in that column.
But it rarely works that way.
It doesn't. As we've seen today, the most profound impacts of your marketing, the billboard effect, the deep brand trust, the long-tail conversions that happen weeks later, they don't always show up cleanly on the immediate dashboard. They live in the murky, hard-to-measure waters of long-term human behavior. So my question to you is this: what hidden value is your marketing program creating right now that your current dashboard is completely blind to? And more importantly, what are you going to do tomorrow morning to finally start measuring it?
Why is your obsession with your competitors' metrics actually sabotaging your own business? Today, we're going to tear down the illusion of industry averages and show you exactly where the real competitive advantage actually hides.
It is remarkably easy to get caught up in the comparison game, you know. We all have that instinct to look over the fence to see how green the grass is on the other side. But when it comes to the highly technical, deeply nuanced world of email marketing,
That instinct will almost certainly lead you straight off a cliff.
exactly, straight off a cliff.
You are listening to a deep dive into some really groundbreaking strategies pulled from Chad S. White's email marketing rules. Specifically, we're zeroing in on Chapter 4, pages 96 to 124, which covers benchmarks and competitive intelligence.
Right.
We are going to explore why external benchmarks are, well, almost always a statistical trap designed to lead you astray. But we aren't just tearing things down. We're going to walk you through exactly how to build a foolproof internal benchmarking system.
And finally, we'll cover the tactical, highly sophisticated way to spy on your competitors so you can steal their underlying mechanics, not just blindly copy their creative.
Yeah, and this matters deeply for anyone trying to scale a business because, it forces a shift away from vanity metrics, redirecting all of your operational energy toward actual profitable growth.
Precisely. I mean, we spend so much time looking outward that we forget the most valuable, highly correlated data we have is generated right inside our own operations.
Right.
When you strip away the noise of what everyone else in your vertical claims to be doing, you can actually start making decisions based on your own historical reality rather than some abstract industry average that mathematically just cannot apply to your unique ecosystem.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for this deep dive is clear. We want to redefine what success looks like in an email program. We're going to strip away the outside noise and focus heavily on self-competition and smart espionage.
I like the sound of that.
Right, so let's start with this first big concept from the source material,
Yeah.
the trap of external benchmarks. Every marketer and business owner wants to compare their performance to their peers.
Oh, constantly.
You always hear people asking, like, what is the average open rate in the e-commerce sector? Or what click-through rate should I expect in B2B SaaS? But the source text makes a really strong case that this data is functionally useless. So why is it so dangerous to look at an industry average?
Well, it is incredibly common because it is human nature to want a scorecard. You want a single number that tells you if you are winning or losing compared to the rest of the pack.
Right.
But the core problem with these external benchmarks, these massive industry reports that get published by email service providers every year, is that they are aggregations of data that completely strip away context.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You are looking at a blended average of thousands of companies that have completely different strategic goals, totally different list sizes, varying levels of technical sophistication, and frankly, they operate in very different sub-verticals.
Right? Like a massive legacy enterprise retail brand
Mm.
and a nimble direct-to-consumer startup might both be categorized as retail, but their email programs are structurally entirely different.
Exactly.
Let me try an analogy here to ground this, because understanding the flaw in the data is crucial. Relying on external benchmarks to judge your own email performance feels a bit like trying to wear someone else's prescription glasses.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. You might see a friend wearing a stylish pair of frames. From the outside, they look great. They look like glasses you could wear. But the second you put them on and try to look through them, the whole world is blurry and you instantly get a headache.
Yeah.
Why? Because those lenses weren't tailored to your eyes. In the exact same way, an industry benchmark wasn't tailored to your specific audience, your unique brand voice, or your internal list hygiene practices.
What's fascinating here is how much list management alone dictates those metrics. The nuance of list management is the hidden variable that is entirely obscured when you look at an external benchmark.
Oh, totally.
Let's make this highly practical. Imagine you have a database of 100,000 subscribers. Right now, your operating philosophy is broad reach. You send every single broadcast email to all 100,000 people, regardless of whether they have opened an email in the last 12 months. Let's say your open rate is sitting at exactly 12%.
Right. And then you go look at an industry report, and it says the average open rate for your sector is 22%. So you immediately panic. You think your creative is failing, your subject lines are garbage, and your marketing team is dropping the ball.
Exactly. But you don't actually have a creative problem, you have a denominator problem.
A denominator problem. Tell me more about that.
Well, let's say tomorrow, without changing a single word of your email copy, you decide to dramatically tighten your segmentation. You implement a strict rule that says you are only going to send promotional emails to people who have actively engaged, opened or clicked in the last 90 days.
Okay, so a much smaller group.
Right. Suddenly your list size drops from 100,000 down to maybe 30,000 people. But because these 30,000 are your most highly engaged, brand-loyal subscribers, your open rate mathematically doubles overnight to 24%.
Oh, wow. And suddenly you are beating the industry average. But you didn't write a better subject line. You didn't offer a better product. You just artificially shrunk the pool of recipients to only include the people you knew were going to open it anyway.
Precisely. You just changed your list management strategy. Therefore, if you were looking at a competitor who boasts a 24% open rate, but you have no idea what their underlying segmentation rules are.
Right. You don't know if they're mailing everyone or just their VIPs.
Exactly. That comparison is completely void of meaning. You are comparing a raw, unsegmented apple to a highly curated, precision-engineered basket of oranges.
That makes total sense. You could be looking at a competitor thinking they are absolute geniuses because their metrics are sky high, but in reality, they might just be aggressively trimming their list, essentially sacrificing broad brand awareness for the sake of a high engagement percentage.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the exact same metric, but driven by entirely different underlying philosophies. But let me push back a little here.
Sure.
What about the opposite scenario? What if we are beating the benchmark? If I look at the report and the industry average is 2% click-through and I'm sitting at 3.5%, isn't that a valid indicator that my team is doing great?
See, that is actually where the danger gets even more insidious. That leads to the second major pitfall of external benchmarks, which is complacency.
Oh, okay.
Let's say you are hitting that 3.5% click rate against an industry average of 2%. The natural organizational reaction is to sit back, pat yourself on the back, and say, well, we are beating the benchmark. Mission accomplished.
Right. You report it to the board, everyone is happy, and you just stop optimizing.
But that false sense of security is capping your own potential. What if your specific product is so highly niche and your specific audience is so deeply passionate that your natural potential click rate should actually be 6 or 7%?
Wow. Yeah, you'd never know.
Exactly. By anchoring your definition of excellence to the mediocre average of a bunch of strangers, you stop trying. You leave massive amounts of revenue on the table simply because the external scorecard told you that you were already winning.
That's a devastating trap. You basically allow the lowest common denominator of your industry to set the ceiling for your own ambition.
Beautifully said.
So if we accept this premise, are external benchmarks completely and utterly useless? Should we just ignore industry reports entirely? Because it feels like operating entirely in the dark without them might also be risky.
They aren't entirely useless, but you have to completely reframe how you'd use them. The source text suggests a much better mental model. You use them strictly as guide rails.
Guide rails, okay.
They should never dictate your specific performance goals, but they can keep you from driving your entire email program off the side of a mountain. To operationalize this, Chad S. White outlines what he calls the email performance benchmarking zones to give you a sense of where these absolute boundaries lie.
Okay, so if you are listening to this and you want to audit your own program today, we need to talk about these concrete numbers. Let's start with the worst case scenario. What does the danger zone look like?
The danger zone represents numbers that should immediately set off internal alarm bells, primarily because they indicate that your deliverability, your actual technical ability to reach the inbox rather than the spam folder, is at severe risk.
Okay, so what are the numbers?
If your overall open rate dips below 10%, or your overall click rate falls below 1%, you are in the danger zone. Furthermore, if your spam complaint rate is greater than 0.1%, your hard bounce rate is over 2%, or your unsubscribe rate is over 0.5% on a per campaign basis, you have a massive existential problem.
I want to stop right there and really dig into the mechanics of this, because I think a lot of marketers look at those numbers and think, well, those are just bad conversion metrics. But it's much deeper than that.
Oh, it is.
Let's look at the spam complaint rate. You said greater than 0.1% is a massive problem. If my math is right, that is one person out of 1,000 hitting the spam button.
Correct.
To a layperson, 1 out of 1,000 sounds incredibly low. Why is a metric that small triggering a full-blown crisis?
Because you aren't just dealing with human perception. You are dealing with the algorithmic thresholds of major mailbox providers like Gmail, Yahoo, and Apple Mail. It sounds tiny to us, but to their machine learning models, it is a glaring red flag.
Oh, right.
You have to understand that mailbox providers are fiercely, aggressively protective of their users' experiences. Their entire business model relies on the inbox being a useful, curated space.
Right. If my Gmail is just flooded with garbage,
Yeah.
I'm going to switch to a different email provider. So they are highly incentivized to keep the junk out.
Exactly. And the way they do that is by meticulously tracking sender reputation. They assign a hidden score to your sending domain and your IP address based on how users interact with your mail.
Okay.
If they see that even 1 out of 1,000 people are actively going out of their way to click the report spam button, the algorithm doesn't just think you annoyed one person. The algorithm assumes that your mail is broadly unwanted and that the other 999 people just didn't bother to report it.
It's basically a canary in the coal mine for the algorithm.
Precisely. Once you cross that 0.1% threshold, the mailbox providers will start silently punishing you. They won't tell you they are doing it. They will just start routing your emails directly to the junk folder for a portion of your list.
And then what happens?
If the metrics don't improve, they will route more of it to junk. Eventually, if you hit a hard bounce rate over 2%, meaning you are emailing fake or dead email addresses, which implies you bought a list or have terrible data hygiene, they might just block your domain entirely. Your emails will simply vanish into the ether, undelivered.
So these danger zone guide rails aren't about poor marketing performance. They're about the technical infrastructure of your business. If you hit those numbers, it means the gatekeepers of the internet are getting ready to shut down your ability to communicate with your audience entirely.
That is exactly what it means. It's a deliverability crisis, not a marketing slump.
Okay, that is terrifying, but incredibly clarifying.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side of guide rails, what does the great zone look like? If we want to know what a highly optimized, technically sound performance resembles, what are those boundaries?
The great zone is the benchmark you should be targeting for your highly segmented or behaviorally automated campaigns. You know, the emails sent to the right person at exactly the right time.
Right.
For these specific high-intent messages, you want an open rate greater than 25%, a click rate greater than 5%, a complaint rate of less than 0.01%, a hard bounce rate under 0.2%, and an unsubscribe rate under 0.1%.
Notice how much tighter and higher those standards are for the segmented and automated campaigns. An unsubscribe rate under 0.1% means 1 in 1,000 compared to the danger zone's 5 in 1,000.
Yeah, exactly.
It really highlights that you can't just look at one blended number for your whole program.
And that ties perfectly into the final way external benchmarks can actually be useful, which is looking at the annual delta, or the change over time, to provide macro context. This is where you zoom out and look at the broader weather patterns of the industry.
Let's talk about that macro context, because things happen outside of our control all the time. Walk us through a scenario where a listener could use the annual change in an industry benchmark to actually defend their own performance to a skeptical leadership team.
Okay, let's say you are doing your end-of-year review. You look at your internal dashboard and your overall click rates have stayed completely flat year over year, zero growth. Right? Initially, your leadership team might be disappointed. They might say, well, we invested all this money in new tools and the needle didn't move. But then you pull up a massive external benchmark report and you see that across your entire industry and across all major senders, click rates actually slipped by 10%.
What causes a massive drop like that?
It could be macroeconomic factors like a recession tightening consumer spending. It could be a broad shift in consumer behavior. Or, more commonly, it could be a massive technical change by the mailbox providers.
Like what?
For example, when Apple rolled out mail privacy protection in 2021, it fundamentally broke how open rates were tracked for millions of users, causing massive shifts in how engagement was measured across the entire industry.
Right. If Apple changes the rules of the game overnight, your internal numbers are going to look weird, not because you did something wrong, but because the physics of the inbox changed.
Exactly. So if the whole industry slipped by 10% due to these macro forces, but your internal metrics managed to stay completely flat, you didn't have a stagnant year. You actually had a phenomenal year.
Because you beat the macro trend?
Yes. You absorbed a massive industry headwind and held your ground. You are winning. That broad context is where external benchmarks provide real strategic value. They tell you which way the wind is blowing.
I love that reframe. So if looking at the industry average is basically a trap that lulls us into complacency or gives us unnecessary anxiety, how do we actually know if our Tuesday promo email was a success or a flop? If we can't trust the outside world to be our scorecard, what is the alternative?
We have to build our own scorecard. And that brings us to the core thesis of how to actually measure success, the power of internal benchmarking.
Okay.
You must benchmark yourself primarily against yourself. Striving for constant self-improvement based on your own historical data is the only foolproof, mathematically sound strategy.
It makes sense philosophically, but practically, I can see a massive problem here. If I just look at my own dashboard and average out all the emails I sent last month, I'm still just looking at a blended average, right? I'm just making the same mistake the industry reports make, but on a smaller scale.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the exact mistake most marketers make with internal data. They look at their monthly report and say, oh, our average open rate was 18%.
Right.
But your campaigns are wildly different from each other. Think about the variety of messages a standard brand sends. You cannot possibly compare the performance of a highly personalized, automated VIP birthday email that offers a 50% discount to a generic Tuesday newsletter blast that just summarizes 3 recent blog posts.
It would be like a restaurant trying to judge the success of its entire menu by averaging the sales numbers of a $100 dry-aged steak and a $5 side salad. It doesn't tell you if the steak is actually good. It just gives you this mushy, meaningless middle number.
Exactly. To solve this and to actually control for these wild differences in content and intent, the source text says you must implement a strict, non-negotiable tagging system for all of your campaigns.
A tagging system.
Yes, you have to categorize them with metadata before you send them so you can group them appropriately later. This tagging system is the secret weapon of the truly data-driven marketer.
Okay, I am going to put on my devil's advocate hat for a second. That sounds like a logistical nightmare. If I'm a small business owner or a lean marketing team sending 3 emails a week, do I really have the time to sit there and apply a bunch of different meta tags to every single send? What is the actual ROI of adding this administrative friction to my workflow?
The friction is minimal compared to the clarity it provides. Most modern email service providers allow you to add these tags in seconds during the campaign setup.
Fair enough.
And the ROI is that you stop flying blind. Without tags, you are guessing what works based on gut feeling and messy data. With tags, you can instantly isolate variables and prove exactly what drives revenue. The source outlines 4 specific characteristics that must be tagged for every single campaign. It is the foundation of powerful internal benchmarking.
Okay, if you are listening to this and want to set up this tagging system today in your own platform, what is the very first category you need to tag?
The first characteristic is the audience's engagement level. You need to explicitly define who this specific email went to. Did you mail all subscribers in a broad blast, or did you send it only to your active subscribers, say, people who have opened or clicked in the last 6 months?
Or maybe this was a targeted win-back campaign, so you only sent it to unengaged subscribers who haven't interacted in over a year.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense. If you send a brilliant email to a list of unengaged, churned customers, the open rate will be terrible. But that doesn't mean the creative was bad. It just means the audience was cold. If you don't tag it, that terrible open rate gets dragged into your overall average and makes your marketing team look incompetent.
Exactly. You have to isolate the audience intent. The second characteristic to tag is the campaign goal. What is the primary business purpose of this specific message?
Let me guess. We need to separate the moneymakers from the brand builders.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Is it promotional, meaning it is explicitly designed to drive immediate sales, promote a discount, or push a product catalog? Or is it non-promotional or editorial, like a weekly newsletter, a blog post roundup, or a letter from the founder?
Or perhaps it's an apology or correction email because a previous link was broken. People interact with a 20% off coupon very differently than they interact with a thought leadership piece. If you lump them together, you won't know if your discounts are losing effectiveness or if your content is just boring. Okay, we've tagged the audience and the goal. What is the third tag?
The third tag is the automation level. This defines how the email is actually deployed by your system. Was it a broadcast, a manual scheduled send that went out to a large list at a specific time?
Okay.
Was it segmented, which is a manual send, but highly filtered to a specific demographic, like only people who live in New York? Or was it triggered, a behavior-based automation, like a cart abandonment email, a post-purchase review request, or a welcome series?
This is huge because triggered emails, by definition, hit people when they're already highly engaged with your brand. They almost always outperform manual broadcast email.
Every time.
If you don't separate them out in your reporting, your broadcast emails will look artificially worse than they are, and your triggered emails won't get the individual credit they deserve.
Exactly. And finally, the fourth tag is the campaign type. This is getting granular about the specific format of the content itself.
So this is where we separate a standard newsletter from a massive Black Friday product launch, even if they both go to the active list and they're both manual broadcasts.
Yes. Is it a weekly newsletter? Is it a standard promo sale announcement? Is it a major product launch? Or is it an event or webinar invite?
Okay, let's bring this all together into a real-world scenario so the listener can see exactly how powerful this is. Imagine you are the lead marketer at a mid-sized e-commerce company, and you've been diligently applying these 4 tags to every single email you send for the last 6 months.
Okay, I'm imagining it.
Tomorrow, your CEO walks over to your desk and says, "Hey, we're launching our new flagship product next Tuesday. I need to know exactly what kind of open and click rates we should expect so we can project our day 1 revenue."
Ooh, that's a stressful question. If you didn't have tags, that is a terrifying question. You would just pull up your dashboard, shrug, and give them your blended average of 18% opens and 2% clicks, knowing full well it's a wild guess.
But with this system, it's a completely different conversation. You don't guess. You go into your reporting platform and you apply a filter. You tell the system to show you only historical emails tagged as promotional A&D segmented and an active audience A&D product launch.
Yes, that is the magic moment right there.
You instantly filter out the weekly newsletters, the cart abandonments, the apology emails, the desperate blasts to the dead list. You strip away all the noise and isolate only the exact type of effort you're about to launch. That filtered view gives you a true, highly accurate, mathematically sound baseline of what great looks like for that specific scenario, based entirely on your own historical reality. You can confidently look your CEO in the eye and say, based on our last 3 launches, when we do segmented product drops to our active list, our baseline is a 28% open rate and a 6% click rate. That is our target to beat.
And that right there is how you use your past self as your only true competitor. When you run an A/B test on that new product launch, maybe you test a new subject line formula, you know exactly what baseline you're trying to improve upon.
Yeah.
It removes all the guesswork, all the emotion, and all the anxiety about what the rest of the industry is doing. You are locked in on your own continuous, measurable improvement.
Okay, so we've locked down our own house, we have this beautiful tagging system, our data hygiene is flawless, and we know our own baseline intimately. But we don't operate in a vacuum. We have competitors, and they are out there aggressively fighting for the exact same inbox attention from the exact same customers that we are.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do we look at our competitors without falling back into the trap of vanity metrics? How do we spy on them smartly?
This brings us to the final major concept: smart competitive intelligence. The core philosophy here is that competitive intelligence isn't about copying what your competitors are doing. It is about inspiring your own A/B testing ideas. You must monitor your peers to spot gaps in their strategy, uncover missed opportunities, and analyze differences in their execution.
I love this part. I always joke about putting on a trench coat, a fedora, and a fake mustache to spy on the competition.
Okay.
But seriously, here's where it gets really interesting. I see so many marketers think they're doing competitive intel by just going to their competitor's website, typing in a dummy email address in the footer, and then passively watching the broadcast emails roll in.
Yeah.
But if that's all you do, you are completely missing their most valuable assets.
You are missing the entire iceberg under the water. If you just passively subscribe to their newsletter, you're only seeing their broadcast strategy. And as we just discussed with the tagging system, broadcast emails are usually a brand's lowest performing, least sophisticated tier of email.
Right.
The real money, the real complex strategy, is hidden deep within their automated triggered campaigns. The source text outlines what is essentially an espionage playbook for how to uncover these hidden assets.
Hand over the playbook.
Yeah.
How do we actually infiltrate the competitor's automated logic?
Yeah.
I imagine we need to be a little more proactive than just sitting back and reading.
You have to act like a highly erratic, wildly engaged customer. Don't just subscribe and wait. You have to actively try to trip their behavioral wires.
Save the behavioral wires. Okay.
It's the difference between looking at your competitor's storefront window from the street versus walking inside, taking items off the shelf, hiding them in a different aisle, and seeing how long it takes their employees to notice and put them back. You are actively stress testing their operational logistics.
I love that analogy. We want to see how their systems react to friction and intent. So what does that look like digitally?
First, you browse specific product categories repeatedly to see if they have browse abandonment triggers set up. Then, you put high-margin items in your shopping cart, let them sit there for 10 minutes, and abruptly close the browser to trigger their cart abandonment flows. You need to sign up for their webinars, download their white papers, fill out their lead generation forms. You even want to start the checkout process, put in your email address and shipping info, but close the window right before you put in your credit card.
You are intentionally trying to map out their entire customer journey by walking every possible path yourself.
Precisely. That is the only way to reverse engineer their trigger logic and their behavior-based segmentation. When you abandon a cart, you need to track exactly how long it takes for the first reminder email to arrive. Is it an hour? A day? Do they offer a massive discount in the very first email, which might tell you their margins are high and they're desperate for acquisition? Or do they hold off on the discount until the third email in the sequence? If you browse a specific category, say men's running shoes, but don't buy, do their Broad Tuesday newsletters suddenly start dynamically featuring men's running shoes?
Oh, wow, that's smart.
Right. That tells you they are using advanced personalization to dynamically alter their broadcast content based on site behavior.
That is brilliant. You are essentially doing a forensic audit of their CRM logic. So once we've triggered all these hidden emails and they are flooding into our inbox, what specifically are we looking for? Because we can't just look at the pretty pictures.
You are evaluating them on two distinct levels, the surface level and the process level. On the surface level, you are looking at the creative execution. What formulas are they using for their subject lines? Are they relying heavily on emojis or urgency? What does their preview copy say? You evaluate their headlines, their imagery, and specifically their calls to action. Are they using large, high-contrast buttons or subtle text links? You also want to look at personalization. Are they dynamically inserting your name or referencing the specific city you put in the checkout form?
And if you want to get really advanced here, you don't just look at the email itself. You right-click and look at the source code, right?
Absolutely. If you parse the HTML of a competitor's email, you can learn incredible amounts of operational intel. You can look at their tracking pixels to see which analytics platforms they use.
Wow.
You can look at the header information to identify which email service provider they are built on. Are they using a nimble tool like Klaviyo or a massive enterprise system like Salesforce Marketing Cloud? You can even sometimes spot the conditional logic tags left in the code, which tells you exactly how they are building their dynamic content blocks.
That is top-tier espionage. Okay, so that's the surface level and the technical code level. What about the process level?
The process level is where you really learn about their operational maturity and their respect for the customer. For example, how do they acquire subscribers? Did you have to actively check an empty box during checkout, or was the box pre-checked, legally forcing you into their list unless you noticed it?
Sneaky.
Very. What does their onboarding sequence look like? Do they send a beautifully crafted 3-part welcome series that tells the brand's origin story, or just a single cold transactional receipt with a generic discount code? Do they have a preference center where you can actively choose how often you hear from them?
And crucially, how hard is it to unsubscribe? Do they make you jump through a million hoops, log into an account you forgot the password to, and navigate a dark pattern menu? Or is it a clean, respectful, one-click process?
Right.
You can learn so much about a company's long-term customer lifetime value strategy just by looking at how they handle unsubscribes. So we are gathering all this intel, stress testing their flows, parsing their code. What is the practical takeaway here? We don't want to just have a messy, overflowing inbox full of competitor emails.
The listener needs to formalize this research by building what is known as a swipe file. This is a dedicated repository. It could be a tagged holder in your inbox, a shared Slack channel with your team, a Pinterest board, or a specialized software tool built for this, where you save the top performing, most interesting, or most uniquely designed emails from your competitors. You meticulously curate the best of the best.
Let me jump in here because I know what people are thinking.
Mm.
Isn't a swipe file just a polite corporate word for a plagiarism folder?
Mm-hmm.
I have to emphasize a massive danger here.
Yes. Crucially, do not just blindly copy them. This is the single biggest mistake marketers make when they start building a swipe file.
Okay, why?
They see a massive competitor do something flashy, maybe a crazy interactive design element, and they immediately rip it off, paste it into their own template, and hit send. You cannot do this because your competitor is operating in a totally different context.
Right.
They have a different audience demographic, a different brand voice, different unit economics, and different business goals. What works brilliantly for a highly aggressive, discount-driven competitor might completely alienate your premium, relationship-driven audience.
Exactly. Just because Nike does it doesn't mean it will work for a local boutique. So how do we use the swipe file correctly if we explicitly aren't copying?
You ask yourself a series of translation questions. What is the underlying mechanical strategy here? How can I translate this concept and make it my own? How can I infuse this specific tactic with my brand's unique personality? You use their ideas strictly as challengers in your own A/B tests.
Okay, give me an example of this translation process in action.
Let's say you see a competitor using a massive ticking countdown timer at the top of their promotional emails to create extreme urgency for a flash sale. You don't just immediately start throwing giant red flashing countdown timers into every single email you send.
No, please don't.
Instead, you analyze it. You say, okay, the underlying psychological trigger here is scarcity and urgency. Does that psychological trigger make sense for our brand?
Right. If you are a luxury brand, a flashing red timer looks cheap.
Exactly. So if you decide to test it, you design a countdown timer that fits your aesthetic. Maybe it's elegant, monochromatic, and subtle rather than aggressive. Then you set up a rigorous A/B test. You isolate the variable. You send half your list the standard promo email, and the other half gets the exact same email, but with your on-brand countdown timer.
And then you let your internal benchmarking data, that beautiful 4-part tagging system we built earlier, tell you if it actually worked for your specific audience.
That is the whole system coming full circle. You use the outside world for inspiration, but you use your own historical data as the ultimate objective judge of success. You are testing their hypothesis on your ecosystem.
And if it fails,
If the test fails, you learn that your audience doesn't respond to that specific urgency tactic, and you saved yourself the embarrassment of blindly rolling out a strategy that would have hurt your brand equity. If it succeeds, you found a new, validated optimization that you can confidently roll out to future campaigns.
So what does this all mean? If we pull all these threads together, the hidden dangers of external benchmarks, the foundational power of internal tagging, and the art of smart competitive espionage, it really feels like we're building a completely different mindset for the modern business owner. We are moving away from anxiety and moving toward extreme precision.
We are. The underlying philosophy, the actual soul of this chapter in the source material, is that true, sustainable competitive advantage doesn't come from obsessing over what everyone else is doing. It comes from radical self-awareness.
Radical self-awareness, I love that phrasing. It means accepting that your business is a totally unique organism. You can't diagnose your own cardiovascular health by looking at the average heart rate of the entire city. You have to measure your own pulse.
Exactly. External data, whether it's industry benchmark reports published by ESPs or the automated emails you meticulously capture in your swipe file, should never, ever be used as a definitive scorecard to judge your worth.
Right.
It should act purely as a catalyst for your own internal testing. You look outward to establish the extreme guide rails, to ensure you aren't drifting into the danger zone of deliverability, and you look outward to spark new tactical ideas that you might never have thought of in isolation.
But the ultimate authority, the judge and jury of your success, is your own historical data, properly tagged and meticulously tracked. You use the outside world for inspiration and boundaries, but you compete only against your past self.
When you adopt this mindset, you stop chasing vanity metrics. You stop trying to manipulate open rates just to look good on a dashboard, and you start driving actual, measurable, profitable growth, because every single decision you make is based on how your specific audience responds to your specific brand.
This has been incredibly clarifying. We've taken a topic that usually causes a lot of stress and anxiety, comparing ourselves to the competition, and turned it into a highly actionable, structured, internally focused system for constant self-improvement.
This raises an important question, something for you to mull over as you look at your own marketing strategy today. Think about the intricate internal tagging, the nuanced behavioral trigger logic, and the deep, data-driven understanding of your audience's behavior that we've discussed. If your closest competitor were to somehow hack into your systems, steal your swipe file, and completely copy your email strategy tomorrow, word for word, design for design, would they succeed? Or would they fail simply because they don't possess the deep, internal, historical understanding of why you built it that way?
That is a brilliant thought to leave on. True strategy is invisible. Only the execution can be copied, and execution without context is useless. Now that you know how to accurately measure your success and gather the right kind of intel, you need the raw material to fuel this entire machine. Next time, we dive into the art and science of list building and profiling, where we'll discover why having a massive email list might actually be the biggest liability in your business. Keep diving deep.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.